Good evening and welcome to the June 3rd, 2026 Town Council Workshop on Growth. This is our third growth workshop. This ties into council goals. And our planning director, Autumn Spear, is going to lead us through a presentation in a minute. Just want to preview, and I think everyone's sort of looked at the materials and the agenda. This is going to be broken up into three parts. First, kind of checking in on where we are with the rate of growth ordinance, the annual report, updates, and then sort of a recap of legislative changes. So the infamous LD 1829, which ultimately turned into LD 2173, and there's also some companion legislation. And then finally, something that hasn't, as Tom alluded to at the last meeting during his report, maybe hasn't been on the radar quite as much townwide, but some potential consolidation and refinement of the zoning districts, which the long range planning committee has been working on. So we're going to kind of shine a little bit of a light on that. And I will note for the record, Councilors Shoup and Doherty are not yet here, but we will go ahead and get started, and I'll turn over to you, Autumn.
Great, thank you, everyone. Let me share my screen. So in your packet, I gave you just some memos with most of the information I'm going to show you on the slides, but I'm also going to do a little bit of a recap. I'm calling this one, Where Are We? So we did a workshop in October, and then we did a workshop in November. But during those meetings, there were pretty lengthy presentations, lengthy discussions. We really talked about all of the tools that we have at our discretion for growth management. We talked about the different legislative items that were already approved at that time and we're moving forward. And then we talked about all of the existing plans that we have in place, and we gave you an update on all of the different strategies and everything. So this is just a recap of the growth management strategies. And a lot of this is just really for information for the public to have these continually be in one place. So we have these tools, the comp plan, of course, and then zoning is really the implementation of the comprehensive plan, financing tools, the committees and boards, the conservation land bond, the rate of growth ordinance, which we're going to talk about tonight, and the moratorium as an option. I also put this slide back in. This is a really good look of what's happened in the last 65 years as far as how we've grown and how we've addressed it with impact fees and when we first did the GMO. And so this is really good information slide. So what we're going to talk about tonight, as Corey mentioned, we're going to talk about the rate of growth. I'm going to show you the annual report where we are. And then the next 3 years, I've got it broken up a bit. Year one, and then maybe let's do a new 3-year cycle. 2027 is going to be a little bit different. And then we'll talk about the outcome of 1829 and 2173. And then again, the consolidation work that Corey mentioned. I'm going to give you just a few slides and some examples of what we've been doing and what our next steps are with that. There are places in this slideshow and in the memos where I'm requesting specific council direction. And so I encouraged questions, stop me at any point, or if you need any clarifications. So the first part is the rate of growth annual report. We put into place a new ordinance in 2023. It was the Tiger Team efforts. Councilor McGee, Councilor Anderson, Karen Martin, Tom, myself, Liam, we all met for a really long time. And we came up with the existing chapter 413, which is the rate of growth ordinance. And what's unique about this version, for those of you that are new to this, it's based on areas of town. So we really tried to address some of the pressing issues that we were hearing from developers and the community about where is the appropriate place for these permits to be allocated and to what level. And so we have Area 1, which is essentially all of our residential zoning districts and our RF. And then Area 2 is really TBC, so Route 1 corridor and a little bit off of that, but more dense areas like Dunstan Crossing. And then Area 3 is the Downs. So those were the 4 areas that we created, and then we allocated permits based on those different zoning categories. So this is a high-level recap. In the memo, there are specifics. If you want to see what the month looks like for each area, for fiscal year 2026, you can. These are the numbers as of May 22nd. We will continue on this current path until June 30th. So the highlighted numbers are to tell you what we have remaining out of the 3-year allocation. So we did it as a 3-year, so it just saved us some time. I think we spent so much time updating it, we didn't want to come back every year. So the annual report is what you all see.
I think that was also responsive to the development community that said, you know, some of our projects, just the way the construction schedule falls, it doesn't fall, you know, linear on a calendar basis for sure. So giving that flexibility seems to have worked out.
So area 1, it was really the smallest of the amount of permits that we allocated. We still have 5 left. So that's good. In previous years in April, we ran out. And so we were quick to run, but we still have 5 right now. Area 2, we have 58 left. We did get really close on our 3-bedroom limitations. We have 12 of those left. But the majority of these are going to Dunstan Crossing, an active project. We did just recently grant 16 to a project at Oak Hill for some new apartments. And we granted 24 to Pageside at Burnham and Dunstan, but those are allocated with site plan approval, but not built yet. Built yet. They are. So if you ever look on the spreadsheet online and my spreadsheet will also always have fewer remaining because I count the site plans. It's really hard for our staff to keep up with building permits and site plans. So that's what I do. And then those are building permits. So if you were to look at the spreadsheet, it'll say that area 2 has, I think, like 85 left right now, but it doesn't allocate for those site plan approvals. So I try to do that when we do this presentation. So area 3, the Downs, they still have 126 remaining. Of the ones that they have used, 42 of them were for a project that I know they are planning to redo. So I'm not sure if it's going to be 42 the way it is now, but it's reflected because it was approved in the site plan process. And then affordable, the only user we've had from that pool was 3i Homes or Sturgeon Place, and they used 51. So you can see we allowed 800 when we did this. We went over what we had to do when we first put this into place, and we've used 555. So we still have 30%. So we're in pretty good shape, and there was not a run on anything. We didn't really have any issues. It's worked really well.
Autumn, why do you think we have so many 3-bedroom remaining? Like I know when we did that, we were concerned specifically about having too many 3-bedrooms because that's where school
Sure.
children tend to live. So we're trying to be thoughtful to not have too many. And I remember the development community was very much against us capping it. And so it's just interesting to me that there's so many that weren't used.
Those are in the Downs. And the
Yeah.
Downs model, they don't do 3-bedrooms, not with this phase. I suspect they will with the new phase. They just updated their master plan, so they'll do more single family. But in this phase, it was all 1 and a few 2-bedrooms.
Okay.
So, but the 3-bedroom, we are getting really close on area 2 because we only have the 12.
I'm pretty sure though, during the conversation, they were the ones pushing for a higher percentage than we originally had suggested from the Tiger team. Like I remember during the conversations, they wanted more. And so it's just interesting to me that they didn't use them. But again, to your point, they didn't know maybe what they were developing at the time. And so
Yeah.
that probably changed
I
their.
think that was it. I think they wanted to keep their options open.
Yeah.
They didn't have really clear sight, certainly 3 years out, what their build schedule was.
So the way the rate of growth statute works is you have to, and if you're going to have a rate of growth statute, you have to do 105% of your previous 10 years average. And so this slide, there's detail in the packet, but this slide just gives you what our average is. There's 2 ways to do it right now. You can exclude affordable from your overall. We did not do that, but I just have the 2 numbers. So the 232 is our current 10-year average through 2025. And then if we excluded affordable units, it would be 206. But our practice has been to use the 232 number. And so we are looking at requiring 244 permits per year. So if it was a normal year, I would recommend we do 3 times that, we allocate them, and that would be fine. But at this point, the statute LD 2173 did some things and actually are quite beneficial. 1829 was quite scary for rate of growth, and then it came back and it actually kind of turned out, I'd say, even a little bit better in our favor. So it'll be a year that we'll have to do some updates to the ordinance and do some changes. So my recommendation is that we do 2027 the way we've been doing it, and we just do this allocation across the 3 areas and the affordable area as presented on this slide. So existing 2023 to 2026, we were required to do 662 based on our average. We put into place for 785. And you saw that we've used about 555. So we'll probably use about 10 or 15 more. And so for 2027, we're required to do the 244. If we keep that same method, this is what I would recommend we allocate. Any questions?
Are you also recommending we try and keep that 3-bedroom?
Yes, I would keep everything else the same. Just do it for 1 year.
Adam, just generally speaking, I wouldn't expect you to have a hard number, but how would you describe the amount of lag there is between when these growth permits are allocated and when the units actually get built? So like Sturgeon Place, for example, is not broken ground yet,
Right.
but that shows up in the
Sure.
numbers.
Probably 12 to 18 months is typical.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say the Downs has probably had most of the projects that we saw get allocated in 1 year and constructed maybe at the end of last year. So 12 to 18 months seems pretty good.
Okay, thanks.
Have you looked at applying the new standards that for going forward? I know it doesn't take effect till
Yes.
July of 27, and kind of how would that compare to this 244? Do you know if it would be higher or lower?
It would be the same number.
Okay.
So that's, if you want, I can go on and I'll tell you about that. Or if there are any other questions about
Absolutely.
2027. And this is one of the things that I'll be asking for input at the end of this part, if this is a good way to go about it. So the new changes really are almost identical, except for the state put in a common scheme limitation up to 35%. We now have a 50%. And that is a safety net so that when you only allow, say, 100 in one area, that one developer doesn't come in and snatch them all up. So we have a safety net for area 2 and area 1 that is at 50%, and the state changed that to 35%. I don't think that's really, for lack of a better word, a big deal for us. They also said that affordable projects no longer require rate of growth permits. I also am not terribly concerned with that because of our history and the way affordable projects typically work. There are other things in place that sort of work those through, especially depending on if they need state financing. And then they created this, you can set limits in other areas without limitation. And I'm like, cool, what are other areas? So that would be part of the opportunity, I think, in revising this. So this is our comprehensive land use map. And right now we have growth areas and then we have limited growth areas. And our limited growth areas are obviously, I think because of the way this map was adopted, we do need to tweak a few things. And really, recommendation 1 would just be to change the legend, really, for limited growth areas to be this other areas category. And then we could take essentially the light green, which is rural farming zoning, and apply a different level of permitting to it. So we could take that part out of area 1 and we could look at it separately.
So just a question. So when we do the calculation annually, is it still of all permits? So like, we still would have to allocate, assuming it was the same 244 in our growth areas, and we could say 0 if we wanted to
Good.
in the other areas.
That's the way I understand it.
And is it only the RF that would be eligible for other areas, or can area 2 also be an other area?
You could change that to, for this part of the conversation, I'm just talking about this, but then when we get to the density part of the conversation, I want to talk a little bit more about that potential as well. And so if, let's see, and maybe I didn't put it in this slide, but in the attachment, there's a FY 2027 recommendation. And did I not give you? Well, maybe I did the calculation and I didn't provide it. I was thinking there is. I'll have to give it to you. I thought I'd put it in. I did it and I didn't put it in the final packet. It's, so what happens is the number's the same, it's 105%. And then there's an opportunity, is that it? What page is that on?
9?
I'm sorry. Fourth from the last.
Is it, what's
That
the,
was the 2027 proposal and then going into 30.
yeah, I guess I'm missing a page in my attachment. That's why I thought it was in here. So let me stop sharing and I'll pull that up if you don't mind. Yep, thank you. That's what I was looking for. I knew it was in there, but my print doesn't have it. So I'll go to this. So did I catch up? On this table in your packet, this is really telling you what we would probably have to do for 2028 to 2030. So you're looking at plus or minus 732 permits. It obviously will be a little affected by the average of what happens in 2027. Our average is, our numbers annually have been going down. So our average will get a little bit lower. We had a peak year that really, in 2024, 2021, we had 337 housing units. So once we lose a few of those, our averages will keep going down because we had a really low year last year. But this is what I would probably propose doing is area 1 would get a certain smaller amount. Area 2 and area 3 would be very similar to how we do it now. And then this other area, if we just put an RF, you'd do like 30 for this 3-year period, maybe 10 per year. So that's just a first blush, how you could allocate for the different areas.
So one of the areas I feel like we've been getting a lot of feedback from the community is really area 2, I think, where people feel like it's pretty developed and they're concerned about continued development. So I'm just curious, do you feel like 225, and this is maybe for the council too, like is 225 too high? Because that's Dunstan and Oak Hill, right?
Dunstan, Oak Hill, all of the Route 1 corridor and some little arms off that.
But is there a lot of development land in those areas, or is it mostly, would it be like multifamily units where that 225 kind of makes
It would
sense?
probably be multifamily. Yep,
Right.
that's where our denser, well, and with LD 1829, there will be some opportunities for more density, but that's really where our growth area is in that area 2.
Mhm.
Outside of the downs, area 2 is really it.
Yeah.
So we do want to target the bulk of our growth there, even though I know it's uncomfortable to see it, but it would be probably more uncomfortable to see it
In the RF.
everywhere. We also have, our zoning is also better equipped to some degree to address those concerns with design standards and things like that.
Just to be clear, in the near term, the 12-month allocation you're recommending is something we'll have to consider.
Correct.
And then this other one, you've just kind of done some
Just-
speculating, but that will be over the next year or so. We can refine that and come back for
Yes.
further amendment.
Yes, I was actually hoping, based on how this goes, if you're on board with the 2027, I can quickly turn around those tweaks just to get those numbers in place. Did you have any more questions on this? And then I'll go back to the slide. So I put these things in here just as reminders, really, and for public consumption, but these are our vision statements for our comprehensive plan. So those really guide this map. Just some things to keep in mind. The future land use, this is from our November and October meetings, there are some strategies that are called out as you think about how we might want to update our land use plan. And these are some of the things that you would contemplate. We do have, some things in here that talk about lack of services and protecting those rural areas. We also have rules about, or strategies about continuing to grow in the regional and community centers and really focusing on those areas rather than in the rural areas. And so what I'm specifically asking for this point is update chapter 413 to address FY 2027. As I mentioned, I could prepare that for the next meeting. And then to update chapter 413 to address legislative changes, we'll prepare that over the winter. I actually have a draft that I'm speaking with Phil about. And then the first recommendation would be to update the comprehensive plan land use map to reclassify other areas as almost a simple legend change at this point for this one. And then are there any other topics? If you come up with anything else throughout this meeting, that's fine as well.
Just to be clear, the third one, updating the land use map for the other areas,
Mhm.
that's something that can be done. Doesn't have to be done immediately.
Right, that would be, those conversations are what we need to have in place for July 1, 2027 implementation of the new laws. So they're things that could happen over the winter months.
Are there guidelines that say what can be classified as other areas?
I think there are some, I think our changes, the proposed changes make really good sense because of the lack of infrastructure and utilities. So the guidelines are pretty loose as well. So I think we have some discretion.
I mean, if we were looking for
An inch.
to kind of hold down
Mhm.
permits, that would be a way to kind of segregate those
Mhm.
areas and those are already areas we weren't really looking to issue a lot of permits, right?
Right,
Okay.
right.
But is it like any reduction we make in one area means that the other areas will only be given more permits?
Right.
Okay.
You still have to, so if you have to do 100, you still have to do 100. The other areas are in addition to,
Okay,
but you could say 5. So if you want to choose it to be another area where it's unlimited to what you can do with it.
so with those other areas, could we still use the cap and apply it to the other areas to come in? Or is it really anything we put in the other areas is addition to what we would put in the remaining?
It would be in addition to.
Okay.
Yep.
So like, for example, if we have 244, we need to allocate, we have this other area, it would be 244 to other places. And then if we wanted
Less.
to do, okay.
But you're taking out 30% of your land
Yeah,
in your allocation. So I'm gonna say it out loud, the likelihood of the rest of them happening is slim because you've taken out the area that they can actually go in.
okay.
It's plus, but it could be very low,
Right.
right? That's the difference.
Yeah, and your recommendation was really just the RF.
At this point, yes.
I just want to make one point. My point I always make is, I think we should try to encourage ADUs, individuals, to be able to,
Mhm.
make affordable housing. Instead of the big box stuff. That's what everybody's been complaining about. And it seems like we're still funneling it down into the Route 1 corridor and big box building and more
Mhm.
traffic. I really think that if you spread the traffic throughout the town, you'd be better off than confining it into one area. we have to designate, we've designated this area, this strip as a development area,
Mhm.
but maybe we should change that. I don't know.
Do ADUs need a growth permit?
I do not.
Okay, so that's where ADUs can still be allowed, but to Scott's point, in LD, whatever number it is now, I can't remember. When you can add more units, when you add a unit, does that require a growth permit?
Each residential unit would require a permit, a growth permit.
Okay.
But to your point, Scott, there's a third part to this that the Long Range Planning Committee has been talking about, because you're right, everybody shouldn't just live west of the turnpike and then have to drive in, because it is a traffic nightmare if you have half your
Right.
population doing that. So I'll get to that a little bit too. But ADUs, the state has really gone with LD 2003 and even more so with this. The state has gone above and beyond to make ADUs accessible for everyone, no matter
Right.
what the town wants to do.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah.
But
Thank you.
I think you raised a good point though, of like, the other portion of that legislation was to allow for multiple units on a lot. And so if we restrict it too much, we're essentially preventing certain neighborhoods the ability to add another unit. So like you've also talked about like garage apartments and things like that. So if
Right.
someone wanted to add something, they have 3 acres somewhere, I don't know if that's the right acreage, but if they want to add something, by limiting how many permits we allow, could limit people from doing it. So I think for the 3-year outlook, I think that's a real discussion the council should have of like, what do we want to allow and encourage in the RF, especially to allow for multiple units if people wanted to add another unit on their lot.
Yeah, and I guess from what the state's saying, like you said, you have to have such a certain size lot. If you have a 1 acre lot,
Yeah.
you can only put one ADU probably. You can't put 2 or 3 or 4. But if you did have 3 or 4 acres and you was in North Scarborough, what is the situation there when you don't have water and sewer?
You have to be able to have the minimum for septic, and depending on how many units, it's 20,000 square feet for a minimum
Right,
for a single family home. But the state law also, you can do up to 4 units, up to 3 units on every lot, regardless of septic or water situation, sewer.
as long as the lot is big enough for setbacks and all
Right.
that.
Yeah,
But that's only 10,000 square feet, right?
no, so let me get into this next part.
All right.
Okay.
This is like.
So this is the fun part. This is just a really brief highlight of the legislative outcome of LD 1829 and 2173. And these are the ones that I think are the big ones for us. So there's an affordable project. There's a height bonus, so you can go up 14 feet, but you not to exceed 55. So that's great. We've actually been asked about this before for an affordable project, just to be able to do that. Planning board approval is not required for accessory dwelling units. We didn't already do that. But you can now not require planning board approval for 4 or fewer units either. We did previously do that. That would have qualified as a subdivision. So we don't get a lot of 4 units. I haven't seen anything like that come in since I've been here. But now we would do those as staff. And then accessory dwelling units, previously they could be on any lot with a single family home, but now if you already have a duplex or a triplex, you can do an accessory dwelling unit as well. And we can no longer require the occupancy. So that is the big one for us. We have this rule in place that if you're gonna do a permitted ADU, you have to reside in one or the other, and we can't do that anymore. We can still maintain our short-term rental rules and we can still maintain our size limitations, but we can't do the owner occupancy. So those are sort of the big ones that affect us, but not tremendous effect.
Autumn, a question is, a neighborhood has homeowners association that forbids like ADUs. Does the state law override that, or does the home HOA?
No, that would take precedent. The town does not enforce those. And so I've advised my staff, it puts us in a sticky spot when we know, I've said, we are not even looking at your deed restrictions anymore. You need to, beware and enter at your own risk if you have an HOA and deed restrictions. We're obviously gonna say, hey, you might want to check that, but we don't enforce them. I think that's gonna be something that's probably gonna stop a lot of people from doing what they think they can, because they probably do have a restriction where they can't have an accessory home or a second dwelling unit or something to that effect. But we'll just have to amend our zoning ordinance to follow the state guidelines.
Sorry, just to be clear, so, local covenants prevail. State law does not overrule them. So
They will prevail, but they have to be upheld by the HOA. They have to do that.
State law doesn't simply wipe
Right.
them out in
Yeah.
that regard and say,
Right. Yep.
So the one thing not on this slide, because it was a change from the legislation that I think is like the biggest win that we got as a community, was the fact that they're upholding that 105%
Yeah.
in growth
Rate
area.
of growth. Mhm.
Like, I know the 244 for folks probably still feels like a high number, but that is state law. Like, we can't go lower than that. But the fact that the town advocated and GP advocated and everybody advocated, like, to me, that was the biggest win out of all of this, because this would be a very different conversation if we were like, area 2 and 3 is question mark.
Well, right, because the 1829 originally said you couldn't apply a rate of growth area outside of the rural zone.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, free for all, right? So yeah, that's why I mean, it was a really positive and
Yeah.
even got a little better, I think.
Yeah, with the other area too.
Mhm.
Adam, where did they end up on the look back period?
10 years.
It stayed at 10?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
So this is the big one, I think. This is really the one that everybody was like, what are we doing for lot size and density? So basically, if you're in the growth area, you have public water and sewer. So I'd say 60 to 70% of this side of the turnpike. The minimum lot size is now 5,000 square feet. And you can have up to 4 units per lot. And for the first 4 units, it's 1,250 square feet per unit. So that's what that is. If you don't have public sewer, but you're in the growth area, which there are some areas that don't, the minimum lot size falls back to the state requirement for 20,000 square feet. If you're not in a growth area, so if you're in the other areas, the minimum lot size, if you have public water and sewer, is 10,000 square feet, and it's 10,000 square feet per dwelling unit for the first 2 up to, so it's 20,000 square feet. So if you had a duplex, you need 20,000 square feet. You can still do 4 units per lot. If you're not in the growth area and you don't have public sewer and water, so west of the turnpike, it's not specified. My understanding is we can maintain our minimums. And right now we have a 2-acre minimum for the rural farming district. It wasn't spoken to. But we do have to allow up to 3 units per lot. So these are the big ones that really changed density and how that's gonna work.
This chart still confuses me a little bit. So for the public water and sewer growth area, is it 5,000 square feet for the first unit, and then every additional unit is a minimum of?
No, so it's a 5,000 square foot per lot.
Okay.
And for that first 5, it was their attempt, I'm thinking, to address multifamily and density, and they did it with lot size instead of just saying density should be this. About the land use map and why our land use map for how we adopted it conceptually is fine. But to implement it as a hard and fast rule, it's not fine. We need to make some decisions. We need some guidance. So where I have circles are circles that are on the land use map. And so the red are our existing activity centers. And according to the state law, if you're within that circle, you would get the 5,000 square foot lot. And if you're outside that circle, you would be a 10,000 square foot lot, right? And so this is a map that we are working on getting in GIS, but I know just looking at it, these circles are just circles. And so we are gonna need to do something with this map. And so the circles can remain conceptual, and we can try to put it into GIS and come up with this weird, I'm on this side of the street, so I can be 5,000 square foot and you're on that side of the circle. I'd prefer not to do that. Or we can try to match it up with zoning and see where that gets us. What the state has done is really use our land use map is a planning tool, and it's supposed to be conceptual and it can flow, right? But they've made it a zoning map, the way they've applied density to it. And so we have to do some work on this for this regard. So we already were thinking we need to do this as other areas, this limited growth area. And then there's some potential, to your point earlier, John, do we want to reclassify some of this low to moderate density as well to other areas? Because some of these areas should not have perhaps the 5,000 square foot lot. So that would be the benefit to tweaking that. But then to your point, it puts all of our development and growth in these corridors, Payne Road, Route 1, the Downs, Dunston, Oak Hill. But that's kind of what we've got a pattern of currently. So this is, I think this is the part where we're gonna have to have more conversations about what this land use map looks like. Because if you can imagine you're a homeowner and you're going to come into the planning and codes department, you're gonna say, I wanna know how many lots I can get out of my acre. And the first thing I'm gonna have to look at is, okay, what, are you in the growth area? Are you outside of the growth area? And right now I don't have a good tool to do that. So we have to make this tool usable for us. So that gets us to what I'm asking for this. Again, if we want to consider moving the low to moderate density areas, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It could be maybe parks. The village and activity center designations, if we want to try to hone those in more to match zoning, and then any other topics.
We keep talking about an existing homeowner who wants to have the ability to subdivide. I know that's not the right word, but to build additional dwellings. But this also, from a new development standpoint, would open the door, based on how we do this, to a developer choosing to buy 10 acres and put 30 houses on it. So that, I think we need to have that in mind for, as we're strategizing about what the impacts could be kind of to areas that aren't developed right now.
Yeah, it's important to look at where we have those larger vacant parcels, kind of that usable land, to really know where you might have a big impact.
I think that's probably where we get our low income housing though, I think small houses, on small lots sells for less money, and it's affordable. And that's real affordable housing. And I think we should try to, and in this somehow, is encourage that. I mean, I think you brought it up about Texas, and it was beautiful farmland, and then they had these things where just houses lined up and lined up. And I don't know if we want that extreme, but that makes affordable housing. I think it's why Texas did it. I'm sure those units were they affordable? No,
No.
they still weren't. It's kind of like, well, that was kind of the concept with the Downs. It's like, oh, we can make affordable housing, but then it winds up not being. I don't know how we can get there, but that's what we got to figure out, is how can we make it so that we'll actually come out as affordable housing,
Can we, in the growth units, increase the number that are required to be affordable? To Scott's point, like,
You can't have, affordable units don't need a permit,
that's right.
so they can go wherever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your line of thinking, Scott, because I do, there's sort of, affordable housing in capital letters, which is kind of, has very specific definitions, which we've talked about before, tax credit housing, Section 8, all that stuff. I think there's a place for that. But I do think we should continue to think more broadly about what affordable means. And I think the more that we can try to strike a balance where we have some diversity and some different options, the better, because there can also be a ripple effect where you have people who are, a term that gets used sometimes in the industry is overhoused, which is a funny sounding word, but essentially it just means people who have more house than they necessarily need. It often happens when your kids move out and all that. And I think I think that has been one of the benefits, at least anecdotally, when I look around town, with some of the multifamily development that has happened, is that it's created sort of an outlet, if you will, for people to be able to move, to downsize. Obviously, there are some economic factors right now with interest rates that have kind of frozen up the market a little bit, but I think I definitely support allowing for more, whether it's tiny houses or just smaller scale development, even if it's not affordable by kind of industry standards. I think it creates more opportunity for people, different levels.
So what could we realistically do from an ordinance or zoning perspective? Because I feel like what you guys are talking a little bit about is like the market is actually going to decide what people are going to build. And I don't know if there's anything we could do to, by ordinance, have something like that, or drive to something like that, or create an incentive to something like that.
I think if you wanted to promote housing in a certain area and a certain type, your first thing would be to look at waiving impact fees.
Mm.
It's about $25,000. I mean, 20 to 25, depending on what kind of house you're building. So that's a incentive, because those are just getting passed on to the homeowners. You could look at some places do regulatory, like fast tracking. I need another person, just kidding. So you could do things like that, like expedited permitting. I know, too soon, I'm sorry. Expedited permitting or something to that, for incentives.
What about inclusionary zoning? Like, how would that help? Like, especially in our designated growth areas. Right now, the Downs is the only one that we require in,
Mm.
but
It's really low.
yeah. So is that
So-
an option as well, as we, like, it's separate from the rate of growth, but thinking of growth management and encouraging the type of growth that you're saying, if we did, at least in the designated growth areas, wherever we draw it on the map, to say 10-20% is required to be affordable, that at least that would potentially,
I think you probably could do that. I was thinking, because they wouldn't count against your growth permit. So I'd have to do some more thinking. I think inclusionary zoning is a cool tool. I'm not sure if anyone's figured out how really to use it really well here yet. But it could definitely be part of the conversations.
And I would say, John, I think when you start talking about inclusionary zoning, scale is a big part of it, because you can say broadly 10%, say for the sake of argument, but if someone's building 10 or 20 unit buildings, it's not really going to be practical or economical to have one or two affordable
Mhm.
units. We've seen that
yeah.
here and elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I do think it could have a place.
Mhm. And the reality is, if
Yeah.
we really want more affordable, then we're likely going to end up with more CEAs as well.
Mhm.
And so I don't think our community has also expressed
Mhm.
concerns about CEAs. So I think that's the challenge with all of this, is like, something's got to give if we want to do this. And, what are we willing to do as a community? Because that might mean, to your point, bigger projects.
That's
that
part of what I'm
require
getting at, is there-
CEAs.
right.
Yeah.
Right, in order to really leverage that and to have it make sense, there has to be the sort of a
Mhm.
critical mass that you have to have.
I would say, Corey, isn't
Yeah.
Portland, it's one of the big struggles they've had.
Yep.
And they're clearly bigger than we are, and had been growing at a much
Mhm.
faster pace, and it sort of put a kibosh on a lot of
Right.
big projects.
Yeah, I think there's some other factors there too with
Yeah.
their Green New Deal and all that,
Yeah.
but I think you're right. That has been a storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just when it comes to inclusionary, I don't know enough about it to know if we could be very specific or surgical about it, but kind of inclusionary across the board would require any project, even single family. And it begs the question, what's the mechanism to assure affordability in the future?
Mhm.
And for the handful of projects we have, or affordable units we have, I'm the one answering those questions. And we just don't have the administrative infrastructure or
Mm.
expertise to to manage that type of system. It works fine when you're dealing with a professional affordable housing developer, because they have other requirements in terms of annual reporting and they have mechanisms in place built in to assure that. But these one-offs, it's nearly impossible.
So it sounds like impact fees is the way to go. And the only.
Definitely,
real
it seems
option.
to be an easy way to look at it.
Yeah.
Autumn, what is is an ADU and a tiny home considered the same thing?
No.
Because I think about, there's a lot of places in the country that have done neighborhoods that, to your point, like, you know, you can put like 50 tiny homes, and how would that permitting look in relation to our numbers? And how is that different than, you know, somebody putting a tiny home on their, you know, 2-acre lot versus putting an ADU?
So an accessory dwelling unit has a limit in size. And it doesn't have to comply with the rate of growth, but a
Okay.
tiny home would.
Okay.
And so a tiny home development could come in and they go through the site plan process, and it depends on how they have it set up. But if you had 10 acres and you wanted to put, now you could put quite a few homes on that.
Yeah.
So this legislation lets people do that, but you would condo those units and sell those in that way probably. And you're just really looking at setbacks, and it's totally doable. We haven't had anyone talk to us seriously about a project like that yet since I've been here. But I know that there have been some others in some other parts of the state
Yeah.
successful.
So if I wanted to put 3 units on my lot, but I wanted one of them to be considered an ADU because of size, then I could put more units.
It can max out at 4.
But what if one is an?
It
ADU?
still maxes out at 4.
Okay,
ADU counts.
okay.
Does our current zoning allow for tiny home development? Probably the CPD district does, but beyond that, practically speaking, in terms of,
You could just do it as multifamily if you had to. I mean, I could figure out a way. We don't have a tiny home district. I guess everybody, I mean, it's just a single family home.
take smaller setbacks, you know.
Well, they wouldn't be lots, so most of those are individually condo units on a larger parcel that's collectively owned. So the setback is just the perimeter, so the setbacks between would only be really fire and safety codes.
Then you're right. I was gonna say, I would imagine a lot of it would come down
Five.
more to the code stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're just looking at that sort of separation, which would be 10 feet.
So
I think Bangor's done, aren't they, Tom? I read
Yes.
some things on them experimenting with like a tiny home village that was basically affordable housing.
Yeah, and I think the person proposing that is running into some challenges.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right,
Yes.
that did get quite a bit of press. So currently, our zoning wouldn't prohibit such a
I
development.
don't think so. I think some creative thinking, you could probably still make it work. In the right zoning district, not an RF.
Autumn, under what we're doing with a single lot, and you're gonna add some houses to it, we can still maintain the setbacks of that original lot, right?
Well, that's a point of clarification because we're gonna have, it depends on if it's a subdivision. So if it's in a subdivision, it has setbacks. The subdivision sort of trumps these new laws too, because your stormwater is designed for this, right? And so there's just so many things that the people who wrote these just don't practically practice. And so it's gonna be hard. If you had a brand new open field of land and you came in with the 4, it would be fine. But we're gonna have to redefine our setbacks. So right now, I have 100 foot of frontage required for R2. That's gonna drop down to 50 feet. We're basically gonna say you're required to do a 50 by 100 foot lot. It's gonna have to be much more like the Texas model where everything's sort of geometric and none of this crazy frontage over here with this angle and that angle. So that's gonna be some challenging things. But for units that are already in subdivisions, the potential to build out more is going to be probably cost prohibitive because they're going to have to address their stormwater and all of the impervious calculations that go into those things.
About wetlands,
Do what?
how about wetlands?
And wetlands, sure.
Okay.
Because we do have wetland setbacks now too, so it's a lot more complicated like I envision making a lot of brochures and I keep coming up with this matrix in my head and I can't quite get it, like if you're here, then this. But the first big thing is we have to figure out how we're gonna classify growth versus non-growth. And then we're gonna have to look at each zoning district and figure out the setbacks and the appropriate lot size. And then, work with long range planning district for our consolidation work.
Autumn, before we move on, I'll just go on record as saying, in response to one of the input items that you had up there, I would favor delineating the activity centers along zoning lines and not just sort of the arbitrary circle. And then, as we know from recent discussions, where you draw the line will sometimes be
Sure.
contentious, no matter where you do it, but I think there's more logical connection there. Not how others feel.
And just to be clear, the list of bulleted items on that slide, the time frame is that over this winter in place for next June?
Yes,
Okay, so we have some time.
not a lot of time, but a little bit of time.
Should we talk about these a little bit, just to give feedback on these ones? Is that what you're looking for, or?
Yes, any
So
feedback would be great. If you are all kind of along the same thinking of probably should follow zoning, then we'll look at tweaking the maps and see what that looks like. And see what it might give you some ideas.
I guess my question would be, what about the blue village circles? Like, are those ones, because they're technically considered our growth area today, and so the question was, should these be classified differently so that they're not growth areas? I would lean towards the blue circles not being part of the growth area. The red feels like it makes sense with some zoning map changes, but when I look at this and see Higgins Beach, Pine Point, that Black Point area, like it just doesn't feel like that's a growth area. But it's and they're kind of a mix of area 1 and 2, right?
Right.
So I think we should clean that up a little bit. I do feel like the red makes sense. I do worry about, again, the feedback we've been getting from residents around 2 of the red circles, where again, until there's some infrastructure improvements, like we're just adding.
You're just adding
more.
to the problem, sure.
Yeah, so I might even be a little bit more with Scott for area 2 in the future, where do we want to reduce a little bit and better spread it out maybe to area 1 and allow for a little bit more growth? But again, I don't know what the impacts would be on infrastructure in that part of town, and would that just add costs and things over there? So again, I just feel like area 2 is the one that I'm not sure what we have is the right solution. It's a good solution, but I'm not sure, like there might be something better. I don't know what the answer is, but I worry about those 2 red circles.
So maybe what might be a good way to give you all some options is sort of dive into each of those areas and we can look at zoning, underlying zoning, and maybe we can really pick out some things.
Would you mind just putting the map up so the public?
Oh, sure. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was referring, the ones I'm concerned about are trying to look on the map.
The
Oak Hill and Dunstan circles.
So those are the community activity centers.
And I get what you said before of like, it makes sense that we're growing, but a lot of this I think is more infill growth for the most part, right? Or is there still large lots of land? And I think
There's a few large pieces.
okay, I think that's what would be interesting, is to really understand, like you mentioned earlier, like what are the vacant,
What are the opportunities? out
yeah.
there?
Yeah, I think for Oak Hill, it would largely be infill. But for Dunstan, you've got Dunstan Crossing, which is an active subdivision.
Yeah,
And then there's a large parcel that was the subject of our discussion about designating a TIF area that I think is ripe for development. That's about 80 acres.
yeah. So are those really the 2? Because again, I think when we make it real to say these are like the development opportunities, that helps, I think, make better policy choices versus just like circles on a map.
Sure. I would say let's start with zoning first, and then we can look at the aerials underneath and kind of So we don't, yeah, let's do that. And I'll bring you, do you all want to do that in this forum, or do you want me to do it through long range planning and bring you back some recommendations, or what would be the best way? It's pretty weedy stuff.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah,
to me there were,
keep long range busy with that for
Okay.
a little while.
We have
Yeah.
two counselors there, so I
I know.
trust
Yeah.
the two
Yeah,
counselors
I
there
was gonna
to,
say.
Yeah.
to handle it on behalf
Yeah.
of the rest of the council and have long.
John,
range.
I do think your point about the blue circles is well taken as well, and there, and I, in my mind at least, it ties in a little bit to a couple conversations we've had, I say we, at long range, in sort of thinking about those areas, which I think of, at least in my mind, I think over time, there's been a little bit of a tendency to, we sort of refer to them as mini villages in the town, and to me, that's been largely descriptive, but I think there's been a little bit of a tendency at times to think about, well, because these are kind of mini village centers, we should be thinking about them as kind of mini growth areas. And you could make an argument for that, I think, in some ways, but I think it's a fair conversation to have. And I think it's worth revisiting it
Mhm.
and not just sort of carrying on through inertia.
Mhm.
I have a question too, Autumn. When you look at Dunston and Tom saying there's still quite a bit of land down there. I mean, the infrastructure that's there now is already, I think, problematic in a lot of people's minds. So at what point do we sort of marry, here are the growth opportunities, here are the, like, we can put in X, Y, Z, but then what does that mean for, traffic flow and cars and lights and the infrastructure to support it so that it doesn't become kind of a cluster?
Well, through the development process, we go through these traffic movement permits. And so larger development would have to go through that. And we're actually going through one. Angela's still back there. We're going through one right now, for the down second phase. And so it's a lengthy, detailed conversation. You define your study area and you basically assign trips and you find the failing intersections. And then you work out, to figure out what these fixes are and what sort of improvements that level of traffic has to do. So it's an opportunity to fix some things. But then to your point, there's already some things that we need to fix and we're a bit behind on that we have impact fees, for, but we know we're actively looking for solutions, especially for that area. Because we're gonna have to think outside the box a bit for that part of town for Route 1. We have some areas, Broad Turn Road and that whole intersection, is really just a hot button and it comes up, we've talked, through some developers in Saco, through their traffic movement permits about some things that need to happen at Broad Turn. So that's really development's almost a tool in that way, if we can use it appropriately. There's some opportunity there, so it's not just on the town
Yeah.
to fix things. But yeah, that's a big concern down there. Ideally, I think if Angela and I had our way, we would put medians through the whole area and there'd be none of this right, left turning out. But you have to figure out how to accommodate changing directions, right? So those are some outside of the box sort of conversations.
I think too, for me, I'm thinking about the timing of it. So it feels like we should improve and upgrade the infrastructure before we actually develop, as opposed to putting more development in, which just convolutes the issue we already have. So it's like,
I think that's
instead of playing catch up.
Sure, I think that's a sticky area because we can't say to people, you can't develop your land, especially if you have a certain zoning. And that's a conversation we always struggle with at planning board. Planning board doesn't approve development, they approve plans according to our rules. So if we want to change our rules, then that's a different conversation. Like there's a lot of different mechanisms.
One solution could be when we revisit the areas, when we get the new map and everything, if we carve out Dunston, we could say fewer growth permits there until the infrastructure catches up. So you could still allow for growth. It would just be much more limited on an annual basis. So that way it's not all happening at once,
Yeah.
but could happen maybe a little bit more over time so that the infrastructure can keep up with it.
Yeah.
So that might be something in the future to consider for what is now area 2, maybe bifurcating that a little bit with this new map to say, we want big growth in the downs, that makes sense, it's designed for that. A little bit more growth, or a little bit less growth in Oak Hill, but less growth in Dunstan. And then whatever happens in the rest, I think could be the fourth option. But again, I think I'm with Michelle in the sense that if we do still have big swaths of property in the Dunstan area, we may want to, at least through the rate of growth ordinance, try and limit the speed until we have real infrastructure solutions or other things are addressed in that area.
The challenge with that approach is that unless the town undertakes the improvements, the infrastructure will never catch up. And if developments need to be of a certain scale to demonstrate that their impact is sufficient, that a major improvement is required. And private money is used to make that improvement. So
That's a good point.
and I would say, you know, we did improvements at Dunstan and also at Higas Parkway prospectively. So the town funded those improvements, which included rerouting Payne Road, new signalized intersections, and we're paying those bonds back with impact fees. And that's part of the conundrum we have with the Payne Road corridor. One option is for the town to undertake that as a project, and then use impact fees to pay the debt service on it. Have the improvements sooner than later.
Yeah, to that point, then, should we be looking at impact fees in the Dunstan area that are relatively significant?
Yeah.
To try and make sure that we're, to make those infrastructure improvements, like is that,
That for certain.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we need
I
to
do,
do
yeah, I do agree that it makes sense to have some targeting and some nuance on these things. I think it is important to keep in mind that regardless of whether development is happening within Dunstan proper or whatever area we're talking about, Oak Hill, whatever, based on our geography and our topography, there are only so many main corridors in town, and
Yeah.
regardless of where the development happens, people are still gonna have to go through Dunstan, they're still gonna have to go up and down Route 1, they're still gonna have to go through Oak Hill, that intersection, so it's, I think we have to just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a nexus there
Mhm.
to around impact fees and,
Particularly south of us
Right.
too, right? Like outside of Scarborough,
Right.
they're using our road.
Yeah.
Can we
Right.
make them pay impact fees?
They do when they go through our
Can we
area.
make them pay more? How do we do that? Yeah.
I want to make sure you have enough time to get through the rest of this.
So the next part is just to give you a view into what the Long Range Planning Committee has been doing. We took into account all of the comp plan strategies and are working through those. A lot of those are all about consolidation and trying to figure out where we have the right zoning and to right size zoning, especially in regards to our rural districts and in some of our neighborhoods in town where they may not be zoned appropriately now. So we started working on this last summer. And we started working on the TVC review, and I quickly found that that was not going to be able, we had to take a big step back. And so we did some workshops and just some brainstorming ideas to try to really create our ideal sort of buckets or zoning districts outside of thinking about our town. And so we've been working through that. And in December, we completed our district review and came out with 9 zoning districts that would sort of encompass everything our ideal town would have. And then now recently the land use tables that you all just approved and all of the zoning amendments, we've been marrying those two to sort of use them to true up to see if our ideas and those mesh. And so you're not meant to be able to read this, but the 9 different districts, we basically have a conservation district, which is new. The rural farm activity district. And so this would be really for true farm land, and then rural residential, which is really an estate lot zoning. for the RF got broken into more, but everybody else stayed, is getting consolidated. So then there's a suburban residential district, a neighborhood residential, this idea of a neighborhood center, a community or a town center, and then a regional center and business and industrial. So we've been grouping things in that manner. So we're, the use table comparisons, we're kind of seeing that there's 4 TVC districts. They're very much the same district, except for a few nuances. So we're trying to combine those into maybe 1 or 2 of these categories to be more appropriate. So our next steps, where we are now, next Friday, we're actually gonna have more of a fun activity, I think. We're going to start with Dunstan and Pine Point. And we're gonna see if we've got tracing paper and we're gonna look at our zoning and we're gonna see if we were right. Like if we can apply our ideal zoning districts on the ground and see how far off we are about what they are, what exists today. And so we'll go through that exercise. And the great thing about it being so timely is we already have to combine essentially all of our residential districts because of the state mandates. And so it's gonna give us, I think, a good look into that and a good preparation for that. But it's been a really fun project. And I think after we get our work done, and it sounds like we can also use the land use plan with that work. And so we can do all of that together. We'll come back to you all with a full report and a couple of different meetings over the winter. And then when we get the new planner, we can probably start working on some of those area plans, perhaps after we get this legislative stuff behind us. So. Any
I
questions?
just, yeah, on that description you gave of taking the 4 TVCs
Mhm.
and combine them, do you mean we kind of like expand those so they become contiguous?
No, sorry, it's more of a table sort of exercise. So
Okay.
right now where we have 4 districts and maybe the only difference between TVC and TVC3 is that TVC3 can do like, I don't know,
Oh,
coffee
okay,
shop.
uses and definitions.
It's just, it should just be really one, right? And so that's what we're working on, just consolidating it even more. So, because I think what I hear, and what most communities are at the point of, it's not really about what's in the building. I mean, some things are, but it's really about how it looks and how it functions with its surroundings. And so we've got some really nitpicky zoning conditions. I think there were 60 conditions for different uses. So trying to just further consolidate that and then to really get at what we actually want to happen on the ground and how it can function. And then it's also an opportunity for us to rethink a little bit about our design standards and how landscaping and trees and all of those things function.
Roof line.
And roof lines. Those will come up with the area plan discussions. Yep. Any other questions?
So just, for your ask about the current or your recommendation for 2027,
Mhm.
I do feel like that makes the most sense at this point. I do think the 3-year next one, I think requires a little bit more information data. I think the concept of carving out different areas and trying to regulate growth in different areas based on what we want, I think is a good one that should continue. I just question, is it still the 3 areas? And now with this other area, I think there's more work to be done to really study and figure out what that next wave looks like, especially with all the changes. What about with like the vulnerability assessment and how that's been done? Like, how does that, do we need to look at like our conservation overlay differently with that in mind? Like, I'm just curious, like, as we do this exercise, like, are there other things that need to change that are also going to better inform decisions like this? Because again, I could see how with that, like, there's probably a lot of places in town we want to be very cautious about allowing growth. And so that might be a way also to look at other areas where we want to be very
Right.
careful.
And you could, vulnerable areas could be another area category.
Yeah.
As we were talking, I was just thinking about like, you could have, I'm gonna confirm with Phil Saucier tomorrow. We have a conversation about sort of some direction for these to go, but you could have a targeted area, targeted growth, which is very specific. But you could have vulnerable areas, which obviously are not meant for growth. And that's why, Pine Point and Higgins probably should not have circles in them.
Yeah.
But the vulnerability assessment really gives you that backup for that
Mhm,
background
mhm.
to change those things. So I think it's timely. I mean, it's not just in response to a law perhaps we're not 100% on board
Yeah.
with. It's also in response to other things that we
Yeah.
now know.
And going back to
Yeah.
Michelle's comment, the transportation study,
Exactly.
like where we have
Yep.
some real vulnerabilities. Again, just trying to be thoughtful about.
You
where-
want to come back to long range, don't you?
I do not. I will allow these, I mean, I love that committee, but
Get
But
on
I-
the list to be an at-large member.
I think those are like things that I would want to make sure, like, as the next 3-year wave is decided, that all those great pieces of data now come into the decision to make
Yep.
sure that we're putting the growth in the right places where we can handle it and absorb it, but not put it at risk and those types
Yeah.
of things.
During the legislative discussions on 2173, they were talking a lot about a shoreland overlay and not having the density requirements there because of vulnerability. Now, do you know if any of that made it into the final?
I did not see anything about shoreland, but we have our shoreland overlay that we can
Okay.
use that as well, to our benefit.
Okay.
I have an-
And ask though, because I didn't see anything out.
I think the reference to shoreline, Larry, was really, that was the first time the state came in and told municipalities, kind of impose zoning requirements on us.
No, okay.
Oh, it wasn't,
2003 and 1829 was kind of the next wave. It was the next example. So it's fairly unique for the state law to come in and direct communities what's good for them.
I think that was some of the discussion around the whole effort.
So one of the things that we've also talked about growth management is the buffer that we allow. And so
Mhm.
Autumn, when would be the best time to revisit and have that conversation about wetland buffers and revisit that? Like, it sounds like there's already a lot that needs to be done, but like, where does that conversation fit in? Because that's
We're-
also been a big concern.
We're actually having that conversation right now through the low impact development standards
Okay.
conversations. So we just met with Conservation Commission last week and talked to them about where we were headed with the DEP, the state requirements, and then some things we wanted to do as a town in addition. So we have a meeting scheduled for July 25th. We're putting out a public meeting, to put that out there to talk about that. So I suspect that'll be happening at the same time this winter as well.
Okay.
So we'll have those conversations too.
Great.
Madam, can you remind us, when will we start working on our next comp plan update?
I think it's in
Way sooner than I think.
2029, 2030 is what I
Okay.
put it. It made it into the 5-year CIP plan. Cause I put it in for 2 years, so 2030, 31, I think.
Do some of these changes that we just discussed, or those amendments though to the comp plan? If
I
we
believe that's how we would handle them.
Yeah.
Because we probably wouldn't be changing any of the text. It'd be really more about the map itself.
But some of that other stuff you just showed at the end, that could really inform.
That's all-
Future comp plan.
That's all really zoning.
Yeah,
But the way we're set up, our zoning map's basically gonna be our comp plan map in the future unless we want to, except for when we start to talk about west of the turnpike. West of the turnpike is what a comp plan would be used for, because they're like, oh, it's all green. Where should we put roads? Where should we put commercial? Where should we put some things? That would be very conceptual. So that'll be a next conversation, because we're gonna have to get ahead of that, not to
Yeah.
scare you, but
That's
Gorham's
probably
coming in
better.
hot and that's their growth area, in North Scarborough. And so we're gonna have to be butted up against that. And if there ever becomes a potential for water and sewer to be accessible for development, then it doesn't matter, what zoning we have, or we're gonna be inundated with smaller lot sizes, so.
Mhm.
Lots of fun things to think about.
Anyone else have anything?
and
Um,
I just want to say, I'm
You're
super,
about to
like,
steal my thunder, aren't you?
well,
Go ahead.
when we did the growth management ordinance last time, I'm really proud to see the result, which looks like it's actually slowed growth. So I think that's just, to me, again, I go back to as the council looks forward, probably next year and updates the next wave, I would say keep some of those principles in mind because I think it's working. And so hopefully it will continue to work if the goal is to kind of manage the pace a little bit. So that to me was really good to see in the data that, you know, a lot of thought in that Tiger team went into it to try and do things that made sure not only did we try and manage the pace, but where we did it and, you know, even some of the type of development, which again, I think, Scott, to your point, some of the things you want to do, I think we got to think about that a little bit. Like, where do we want it? How do we want it? What type do we want to make sure that as the next growth management comes in with all this other information, that really needs to be thought. I think there was a little bit of criticism when we were doing that because people felt like we were like social engineering what we want the town to look like, but to a degree that is zoning, right? Zoning is about engineering. And so again, I think that should be something that for the next 3 year, I think we're onto something. Everyone else, when they have rate of growth ordinances, which was like our original one, was very much just pretty generic in terms of this is our rate of growth, that's what we have, and wasn't as well thought out. So I just want to thank Autumn for, you know, this was, I think, your first assignment when you joined to take something on like this. And it's just been, it was like the first awesome thing Autumn did amongst a million other awesome things she's done and a million more awesome things she's gonna do. So thank you, Autumn.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate all that as well. And also just, you know, want to echo the appreciation for all the work from staff and members of the council, including Larry, who went up to Augusta, and Tom went up, and you know, being part of that whole 1829 response. And as was noted, we ended up with a much better outcome, and we retained our ability to manage these things. And in some cases, we're actually, as Autumn pointed out, better off than we were on a couple of those. And also just wanted to acknowledge that, you know, we've talked about this before, but you know, there's sometimes a disconnect between the in the weeds stuff that we're talking about tonight and the tools that we actually have to manage and steer growth and what the general public sees when they're out driving around and what they experience and what they're concerned about. And I'm very mindful of that, you know, coming right out of our budget process and all the focus on property taxes and everything. And there's always concern about traffic and those things. But I do hope that by continuing to talk about this out in the open and check in on it regularly and do this transparently, that there can be a little bit greater appreciation for what levers we do have and that we're trying to do the best we can. We can't just, it's not a spigot that we can just shut off, nor should we, I would argue, but it's complicated stuff, but I think we have the right tools and the right people.
Just to add to that, I think from tonight's conversation, like the point that Tom made, I think is really good about the challenge and the trade-offs here, because while I think we want to slow growth in Dunston, the trade-off would be, that means it's more likely the town will have to pay for it versus new development paying for it. So there's trying to find that sweet spot of like, what's the right level of growth with the right level of investment? Because again, we're often hearing about concerns about people being able to stay in their homes. And so if we, you know, we just have to balance a lot of things. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but it's a really good point that like, we need to be thinking about all those different trade-offs that have to happen with the choices that we make and ultimately just make a decision.
So next steps you can expect maybe as soon as next meeting. I don't want to promise something we can't deliver, but sooner than later, we'll be bringing forward the fairly simple amendment to chapter 413, which would be to advance this, the next 12 months for the GMO. And then sounds like a lot of work for long range over the next several months. And I think we'll work with leadership and try to find logical points in that process to do check-ins back with council, probably in this kind of format.
And if people are interested in following that, it's what, the second Friday of each month
Yes,
at 8 o'clock here,
8 a.m.
8 a.m.
And I think the public would appreciate a summary of where we got to today, leading into the next time we take this up.
I just have one quick footnote of what I've been seeing a lot about for clarity maybe is that kind of separating, when we talk about affordable housing, is the phrase attainable housing, which is the distinction is more about affordable would be nonprofit, income restricted type things, where attainable is more meaning that somebody is doing it based on what they earn and what's a fair amount to pay for housing. And I think it's a good distinction as we're clarifying that those terms.
Agreed. All right, well, thank you. With that, we'll adjourn the workshop and we'll reconvene in about 10 minutes for the business meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Otto.
Good evening and welcome to the June 3rd, 2026 meeting of the Scarborough Town Council. Would you please join me if you're able and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cody, could you please call the roll?
Counselor Brody,
Here.
Counselor Kane,
Here.
Counselor Donovan.
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Here.
Chairman Phillips.
Here.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is general public comment. This is for anything that is not on our action agenda this evening. If you have anything, please come up, state your name, address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
I'll do my best. Denise Hamilton at Two Rod Road. I'm concerned about the FY '27 paving schedule. Based on public discussion and a comment made at the last meeting, it appears many scheduled roads are in the Pine Point area, while roads like Holmes Road between Two Rod Road and Beech Ridge Road remain in serious need of grading and repaving despite increased traffic and heavy vehicle use. Taxpayers west of the Turnpike should not bear the consequences of decisions that prioritize development accommodation over infrastructure preservation. Under 23 MRS 754, if a municipality fails to maintain roads in acceptable condition, 1, the Maine DOT can issue written notice. 2, the municipality has 14 days to begin corrective action. 3, Maine DOT can perform the work itself if necessary. And 4, costs can be deducted from state aid payments. If this town is going to continue accommodating the FedEx project and not post the road, which has been done so for 50 years and can be done by notifying DOT, then it is this town's responsibility to grade and repave the road to accommodate the increased traffic and heavy trucks all year long from 40 Holmes Road to Beech Ridge Road. Part of the FedEx approval process was they had to widen, grade, and repave in front of their property. Unfortunately, they left a stretch from the property line of the old town landfill past what is to be the emergency vehicle gate untouched and in horrible shape. I hope they'll be notified to complete that stretch. If these concerns continue to go unanswered, we intend to seek clarification and review from the appropriate state agencies, including Maine DOT and, if warranted, the Office of the Attorney General, regarding the administration of state-funded roadway programs and municipal compliance with applicable laws and policies. We'd also like to address the removal of the bypass shoulder at Maple Avenue. During previous discussions, the lane was referred to as a slip lane. However, a slip lane is generally associated with right turn movements that allow traffic to move separately through traffic. This situation involved a left turn movement where motorists traveling eastbound on Gorham Road could proceed on the shoulder around vehicles waiting to turn left on Maple Avenue. It was stated that a couple of residents on Maple Avenue did not want the bypass shoulder restored because of concerns that it could increase traffic through their neighborhood. While those concerns should certainly be considered, decisions affecting roadway operations and safety, more importantly, should be based on what is in the best interest of the broader public, not solely on the preferences of a small number of residents. To my knowledge, there was never a formal public process to gather input from all affected residents and road users before the shoulder was removed. The result has been increased congestion, more accidents, and fewer options for motorists traveling this corridor. If the funding that was previously identified for this work remains available, I urge the town to move forward with restoring the bypass shoulder as soon as possible. At the minimum, the public should be given an opportunity to provide input before a permanent decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Haverhill Hill, Maple Avenue. At the last town council meeting, public comments were made about safety concerns with cars lining up behind those waiting to turn onto Maple from Gorham Road and the blind curve behind them. This road condition arose 2 years ago after the town decided, without public notice, to not put a passing shoulder back after the Gorham Road project. Most people had no idea this decision reversal was even being considered. The passing shoulder was part of the original DOT road design that had been there for decades. Not putting it back was a de facto redesign of a DOT road. So why didn't the town put it back? Because of some feedback from maybe a couple of residents who told the town they didn't want it. I reached out to DOT to get their thoughts about this unstudied redesign since it's a DOT road, and was told that they, quote, did not have much involvement with this project, end quote. The manager stated at the last meeting that the town has, quote, the ability to kind of dust that off and put that in, end quote. So I took that to mean the passing shoulder could be put back. I emailed to thank him, but in response, he stated he didn't say it could be, he said he did not say it could be put back and that there are likely no funds to do so. What happened to the funds that were part of the approved road design that would have put the passing shoulder back? The town engineer stated it would only be warranted if long delays occur for through traffic heading straight on Gorham Road toward the Oak Hill intersection. But what about safety considerations? I looked at Maine DOT public crash data for the past 10 years, and you should all have a handout. Since that passing shoulder was removed 2 years ago, there have been 3 collisions at that intersection, 2 of which were rear end or side swipe crashes, one of them causing injuries. For the 8 years prior to that, when the passing shoulder was still in place, there was only 1 crash at that intersection. Why did the town remove a studied road design that seemingly improved overall safety because of a vocal minority? That's also what happened with the speed tables on Maple and Elmwood. Public safety did speed studies which demonstrated that speed tables were warranted due to consistent and excessive speeding, and the majority of people living within 1,000 feet who received a postcard from the town soliciting their vote indicated they wanted them. A small minority said they didn't want those safety mechanisms. Because of that minority, the town removed the speed tables. The manager stated at the last meeting that he was trying to be responsive to feedback with Gorham Road. Therefore, in that spirit, and to ensure the feedback comes from all stakeholders, I respectfully request that the manager authorize staff to send out a survey to residents in the Maple Avenue neighborhood to solicit their feedback about the passing shoulder. Once compiled, I request that the manager be responsive to the survey results alongside with the previously approved and funded DOT road design and safety considerations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Steve Zamorowski, 19 Teresa Massey Lane, live with my wife. My 2 daughters and grandchildren also live in town. I'm a member of the Parks and Conservation Land Board and the Housing Alliance, but I'm here tonight not representing either of those committees. First, I want to thank the council, the staff, and the school committee for their hard work in creating the 2027 budget. It was a difficult lift. I want to thank them not because it's exactly what I want, but because it's the result of a process where the wants, needs, and perspectives of residents in differing circumstances were seriously considered. I also like to ask folks to vote yes for the school budget today along with me. I have preferred more funding for the schools, but I think the compromise preserves what we need most while keeping the tax rate within lower than inflation. I also want to thank the school department and the school committee for publicly supporting the budget during meetings and in the media. When tough town and personal budget trade-offs are the reality, I find it helpful to remind myself of the need for strong education in our democracy. Shortly after signing the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson proposed a public school system for Virginia, warning against tyranny if citizens were not educated. I think John Adams' words are appropriate at this point. He said, "The whole people must take upon themselves the education of the whole people and must be willing to bear the expenses of it." Ironically, unfortunately, and the federal government continues to defund education today, public health, healthcare, and environmental protection. So those costs are going to be forced down to the state and ultimately will trickle down to our town. Therefore, I don't envy your role in trying to figure all this out, maintaining our great town services while keeping taxes low. That said, I think it would be helpful for the upcoming reviews and setting goals in the future to make those goals using the SMART principles, make them specific, measurable, achievable, and time-bound. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Allison Bristol, Bayview Avenue, and I just wanted to comment a little bit on the workshop. First of all, I was so happy and relieved to hear that it's considered to take Higgins Beach and not make it a village or not make it a growth area, which I think it's the densest area in town. It was at least a few years ago. And if you want to see what ADUs squeezed onto a 5,000 square foot lot looks like. Take a drive down the Higgins Beach and see what's happened down there. People have been able to build carriage houses within 3 feet of property lines. And so our character code has definitely changed the character of the beach, in my opinion, not necessarily for the better. It'll never be affordable for anybody ever again. So I'm very happy to hear that that's an idea. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was something that actually wasn't talked about in the workshop about in the affordable housing discussion. The performance standards for the CPD district in the zoning ordinance requires, and I'm reading this, at least 10% of the dwelling units in a planned development must qualify as affordable housing in accordance with the definition of affordable housing in this ordinance. In the current 3-year cycle, no affordable housing units were built. And Autumn's report reflects the 51 units from the affordable pool, which are the 3I project. And the ground on that project has not yet been broken. Language should, as we're looking at the ordinance, language should be added to the ordinance requiring the Downs build affordable housing in any 3-year cycle. Otherwise, the can just gets kicked down the road. And I say this in all due respect to our chair, that it also doesn't seem right that the Downs be able to fulfill their affordable housing obligation by profiting from the sale of a parcel of land to another developer who then applies and receives a 50% CEA from the town, in addition to the 40% CEA the Downs is already the beneficiary of. This should not be allowed moving forward. Looking at Autumn's 2027 proposed numbers and given the CPD zoning standards, the number of growth permits issued to Area 3 should not exceed 120, or 400 divided by 3 minus 10%, with that 10% or 12 permits available for affordable housing to be built over the next 3 years. Although from the conversation tonight, you don't need a permit for affordable housing. But my point is, we shouldn't increase the number of permits and then have more affordable housing built. Or to look at it another way, in the 3-year idea from, was it 28 to 27 to 29, I think, Autumn, 420 permits. Don't allow 420, allow 378. And so another 10% of affordable housing has to be built in that 3-year period, and that would bring the number up to 420. The other thing that I wanted to mention was the common scheme development, which I'm happy to see.
Wrap it up.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Happy
Thank you.
to see the state is saying a minimum of 35%. We used to have 20, and then we had 20 with 30% for the Downs, and then we upped it to 50%. So I think it would be a good thing for it to come back down to 35% in the areas that is affected. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to the further conversation on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for general public comment? Do we have anyone online? All right. Last call for general public comment for items that are not on our agenda. Okay, thank you very much. Next item is minutes of the May 20th, 2026 Town Council meeting. Entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 6, adjustments to the agenda. There are none. Item 7, items to be signed, treasurer's warrants. I signed those before the meeting and gave those to town staff. And that takes us to the town manager's report. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be quick this evening. Scarter Hill Road, really in a holding pattern, trying to use the remaining time this summer wisely. We'll be restarting a conversation with the developer that's looking at proposing a project that will actually combine Scotto Hill and Payne Road to see if there's any further opportunity for partnership there. And also continuing our conversation with the Flahertys as they are affected most directly as the abutter on both sides. But again, we'll know more about the grant opportunities by August, and there'll be a decision point for this council around that same time. Road projects, again, we're actively underway with our normal spring cleaning that involves all of our painting. One of our contractors does all our, we call them long lines. So your, sidelines, the fog lines on the side of the road, any divided lines on the middle of the road. Those aren't things we do locally. We do have stencils and a crew that does some of the smaller paint work, and that work is underway. I do want to mention a couple of things in particular. The Pine Point area is certainly a hotbed of projects over the last year or so. That drainage work, excuse me, the water main replacement work is really wrapping up at this point. They've patched in their trench repairs, if you will, but it will be passable for the next few months, but that's about it. We do have some decisions to make, particularly along Jones Creek, which historically has had on-street parking. There have been, in recent years, about 35 on-street spaces. Through a series of engagements with that neighborhood, we heard a lot of concerns from residents that live on Jones Creek, where the parking spaces are very close to the driveways and also very close to some of the side streets. And so in working with them, we've come up with a new design that we're actually applying to the East Grand Section 2 when we get there, which will be to provide for at least a 5-foot offset from any driveway and 15-foot offset from any side street. The effect of that is removing about 16 spaces. And that's the same area that we had been contemplating in place of the spaces to actually do a bike lane, just given the unique opportunity this summer. The Pine Point community has responded. In fact, they put up a survey, and as of yesterday, there were 66 respondents. Unfortunately, those results were very mixed and not terribly decisive one way or another. I'm really feeling the need to make a decision what we do for the next 3 months. And I'd like to move forward with a new on-street parking scheme. And it effectively is a trial period, because we'll be coming back, repaving all those streets in September, October, be able to revisit how did it go, and proceed accordingly. We can go back to the way it was historically. The reasons for me wanting to really move forward is already we have parking occurring without any regulation, some of which is damaging areas that are recently loamed and seeded, parking very close to driveways. The business community, handful of businesses in that area have also spoken up that free on-street parking is of great interest and value to them. And the final piece is really the fact that our overflow lot, this is the grass area across from Herd Park, will effectively be not able to be used this summer because they've loamed it and seeded it, and we really need that seed to take. So all those factors considered, I really think we need to have some level of on-street parking. So I'll be directing staff starting next week to go in and accomplish that, and I'll certainly communicate with the neighborhood accordingly. Eastern Trail project is really moving right along. You might have noticed actually on the roads, there's now signage going up, final safety bollards and guardrails. The contractor still being fairly coy with what the completion date is. But I have an expectation by this fall, the project should be turned back over to us. Just worth noting, that's a full year ahead of schedule. So they've worked incredibly quickly. We do have, with the contract dispute, we are moving toward mediation, which I see as a very positive sign. And we do have a meeting scheduled with DOT to talk about additional funding next week. Our 2 projects here on the campus, the pickleball courts, the former skate park just next to us here. You might have noticed that areas have been resurfaced. We'll let that new surface sit for about 30 days till the pavement cures and some of the oils and chemicals kind of get off the pavement. So the final surface will adhere better. That project we expect will be completed by the end of July with much anticipation. Skate park project for itself is moving a bit slower. They're scheduled to be heard and receive advisory opinion from the planning board at their June meeting. And Nick Lish and his team has coordinated a series of neighborhood meetings. And much to our delight, we've been able to connect with the actual many of the users. And this has been a group that has been hard to identify for us, but they have kind of identified themselves. So we think we'll get really good feedback in that process. I've been pleased to be part for the last year or so, part of a local discussion. I say local, really regional. This is around property tax stabilization. And this conversation really lines up nicely with a statewide conversation. The governor put together a commission to study this topic. And our work is really kind of intending to follow on their coattails a bit and suggest things that they could advance in terms of, but our focus has really landed on a variation of a local option sales tax. It will be regional based on counties, which is something new and at least in my experience. It's also based on, it has a revenue sharing component such that all communities will receive something. And historically, that's been one of the challenges with this proposal, is that there are big winners and there are people that, because of the nature of their local economy, really see little or nothing. And so I think this has been well thought out. I did put a flyer in the packet. This project was kind of unveiled at the GPCOG Summit last week, and I expect you'll see a lot more conversation around it. The intent is, and I think they're actively seeking sponsors, and the hope is this could be advanced as soon as next session. So very pleased to be part of that. I believe next week at Finance Committee, we'll have a little more in-depth conversation if you wish to tune in. We did meet with IF&W. This has been something I've been trying to arrange for the last couple of months. I was pleased to be joined with the Assistant Town Manager and Council leadership. I think the Council Chair has provided some updates to the Council. I think it was a very productive meeting. Really, it was focused on other options other than changing the ordinance, essentially. And I think it was promising that there are a couple things that are worth exploring, and they agreed to. So I took that as very positive. Keep in mind, we're already in season, so I think we all appreciated there was nothing we were going to do for this season. But they underscored the importance of really having this conversation now as opposed to waiting till the next time we have our beach management agreement. And so for my part, I will stay on top of this and continue the conversation. Please recall there is a workshop before your next meeting on the 17th, and that is for a goals check-in. I'll prepare from my perspective an update on where, accomplishments in the first 6 months. And if you like, I can share that out and you can contribute to it as well. So we have everyone have some input in that. Bear with me, please. I think I've mentioned in the past the so-called Safe Streets for All program. This is coordinated through GPCOG, is interested in doing and will be doing a Route 1 demonstration project. This will be focused on the area of Route 1, essentially from Hannaford Drive back to Little Dolphin Drive. It's an area that really has no pedestrian amenities whatsoever. It's also an area where we've actually had pedestrian deaths. And so, not surprisingly, it's an area that's been of concern for us for a long time. This project will happen by mid-June and last till mid-November. And essentially, you'll be testing whether certain measures will reduce speed, reduce crashes. They'll be doing testing pre and post, if you will. And really whether there'll be some testing of whether there's kind of support for this complete streets approach, if you will, in this segment of Route 1. So unlike the other demonstration we talked about last month, this will be far less invasive. I don't think the average Scarborough resident will be noticed much by it, but we're interested to see the results. I've mentioned here in the past, but we're getting closer, so you'll see more information about it. We have selected a new curbside collection provider. Historically, I think since the start of the program, it's been Casella, the only, frankly, bidder. So we're elated to see a second bidder this year and chose to go with them. The company is Garbage to Garden. They've been around for 10 or 15 years in Southern Maine, focused predominantly on compost, but have really impressed us with their ability to scale up to buy new equipment and staff to meet this new demand. And so we're coordinating them with them closely regarding just notice to our residents. I'm pleased to say the routes will not change. Your day of service will not change. So the average resident really shouldn't see a difference other than the different color truck. But really excited about a new team and a new approach. Somewhat related to that, and this has been a point of confusion for some residents, our residents are able to bring their green waste. This is leaves, grass clippings, branches, to the Casella facility on County Road, and that will not change. That will still be an opportunity. The two services aren't connected whatsoever. Two final things. Today, we're made aware of a potential vacancy in the Board of Education. And I believe it appears as though the Board of Education is contemplating taking action at their June 18 meeting to actually create a vacancy due to, I think, absence of one of their current members. I mentioned that just that a vacancy kicks into play the question, how do you fill that? And because it's within 6 months of the next election, there's two choices. One, this body could call for a special election for purposes of filling that vacancy, or simply wait till the November. I'll certainly take this up in deeper detail with council leadership, but it would be my recommendation, particularly going into the summer months, that we're very likely to be able to, they'll be fine, and wait till November rather than bear the expense and the complication of a special election sometime this summer. And lastly, I just want to address, there's been some comment or criticism with the town including a statement from the Board of Education in our most recent e-newsletter. And this is really around the school budget. And I just, Liam Gallagher has been most involved, and I just asked him to say a few words about that.
Sure. So to Tom's point, I know the council's received some feedback. I know there's been some online content around the inclusion of what was really effectively an editorial on behalf of the Board of Education, seeking, essentially advocating for and seeking support for the school budget referendum. I think that content, struck most of us as atypical for our newsletter, which otherwise I think is typically very factual or tends to be factual and tends to educate and inform. Just to speak to kind of the process, we routinely include content from our partners on the school side, whether it's staff or the occasional Board of Education contribution, and we're happy to do so. I think this was a bit out of the norm in that it was clearly taking a position on a referendum. Some of the concerns that came out was this sort of improper for the Board of Education to advocate for a position using town channels. Based on that concern, we did speak with legal counsel. I think we're fairly confident that no laws have been violated. There's been no violations of election statutes. The town does indeed retain an ability for essentially governmental speech, although we've certainly refrained from doing so as a matter of practice very deliberately. But I think when faced with the question kind of late in the planning process for the newsletter of either restricting the request from the BOE to issue a statement or move forward and then clearly note that this was, and we tried to do our best to clearly note that this was an editorial, the source of it, italicize it, disclaimer concluding the statement. We did our best to differentiate that statement from an elected body versus staff or the town in general. So confident that there's no outstanding issue, but I think it will be a matter of discussion moving forward as to whether that's a process or a practice we want to repeat in the future. So did want to make that comment.
Thank you, Liam. With that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you both. John?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So Tom, going back to Jones Creek, at the Transportation Committee, I got the sense that there was kind of lukewarm but general support to do a full pilot project this summer that was just for bike lanes, but it sounds like you've made the decision to not necessarily do that, but to just focus on updating the parking spaces.
Correct. And I was aware that and encouraged the Transportation Committee to take it up. And I'm not at all surprised who would be against a pilot. And this is something that I would expect them to. But I think given kind of all the other factors associated, I think this is the better approach for this summer.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I would say it wasn't full support, let's do it. It was there were definitely a lot of drawbacks, but I think
Mhm.
thinking of Corey's town council or Counselor Corner, trying to have a little bit of courage and just try something when we have an opportunity. I think it's the right decision.
Okay.
When it comes to IF&W, I'm still a little bit unclear of like, what is the critical path to closing this out in terms of what decisions need to happen by when. So it sounds like we're waiting on them to come back with something. What happens after that? And at what point does this potential action become closed?
We really don't have to make a decision at all. What will happen next would be, this is the final year of the beach management agreement. And so we'll have to negotiate a successor sometime over the winter. And it will be in that agreement where we'll come up with again. And I'd like to kind of short circuit that and have that conversation earlier. Because effectively that beach management agreement, by its very design, acknowledges that there are actions and behaviors and practices such as beach cleaning and so on and so forth, that if done wrong, can do harm to protected endangered species. So you've heard talk in the workshop about incidental take permits. This effectively moves in that direction. It acknowledges that there are things, and then and we agreed to do take certain measures around those things to provide as best protection as we can. So I think that is the vehicle that I think will see the change. And again, our conversations have been focused and will continue to be on what can we do other than amending the ordinances they've asked.
Okay. When does the beach management agreement start discussions? And because the council typically doesn't vote or review that, right? That's usually at the staff level.
Historically, no, it's been done at the staff level. I appreciate that it may be interest in it may be increasing.
Yeah.
Again, typically we've done it over the winter, anytime before the nesting season next spring.
Okay, so it's very likely there will be no action at this council level for this council on this topic?
Again, historically, I've not brought those, not sought authorization from the council to sign the beach management agreement. We can talk about whether that's something we want to institute.
Okay. I don't think we need to. I'm just trying to understand, like, for the public who are close to this, like, when will it be no longer an open case? It sounds like the beach management agreement, once that is negotiated, agreed to by the town, this would be closed. And is it unlikely that part of that negotiation would require ordinance changes, or is the intent to work through that?
Perhaps not. I mean, I think the council chair alluded to some of the conversation, but it's effectively it's still concerned with that time between, April 1st and May 15th. And there are potentially things we can agree to do in terms of enhanced enforcement and education around those 6 weeks that will effectively provide the same sort of protections that changing the ordinance would.
Yeah. Okay.
So I really think we should run that to ground to see if that's reasonable. And those are conditions that we can reasonably agree to and perform well.
Okay, great. My only other question, maybe it's more a comment than a question. It's great to hear that we'll be talking about the county tax, local option sales tax at finance. I think that would be great to do a workshop with GPCOG and others to not only hear that, but also to hear from that committee that worked on the other tax items. And really what I would love to see is the council, assuming we all support this GPCOG thing, to potentially do a resolution advocating for support for it. I just think of what we did during LD 1829 and LD 2173. And, we have it as a council goal this year that we'll advocate with regional agencies in the state on property tax relief legislation. So I think we should run that play again on this topic and see what we can do to drum up support within the town, but also support within surrounding towns to take a much more assertive frontline approach on this and really drive this particular item. I'm personally very for it. I think we all need to understand it a little bit better, especially the nuances that you shared. But to me, this would be something nice to really rally behind from a advocacy perspective.
Pleased to make that arrangement.
Do you have something, Michelle?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. Tom, along those same lines, I was actually at the GP cog presentation last week as well.
Mhm.
And I can't remember the exact items, but one of the things they talked about in the handout were the exemptions to, I think it was like food wouldn't be part of, the 1%, or like fuel wouldn't be. So just, I think I've had people ask me about it and wondering, what's included and what isn't. So I think that a workshop would help that. And I think the other piece is just when you take a look at like an average household, what would that 1%, what would the financial impact be like in aggregate, annualized?
Sure, yeah, the exemptions, we're not proposing any unique exemptions. Those exemptions that were discussed there
Yeah.
already exist. Sales tax doesn't apply to certain things. Food, drugs,
Yeah.
pharmacy items, agricultural items, there's a whole list of
Yep.
things. So yes, I think reviewing that. And I will also do the calculation for Scarborough. We're talking about $8.4 million. And I will do the calculation to advise you what
Mhm.
percent, how much we could lower the property tax rate.
Yeah.
With that money, and it will be notable. It will be 15% or higher. So yes,
Okay, good.
pleased to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the manager's report?
Yeah, as far as, it does make sense for the parking down at Pine Point with the parking situation there and the lot not being used. It makes sense to have some parking spaces and test moving them back further and having few of them. That's what I understand you're
Yes,
doing.
That's it.
To see how that does work. And you may find that you want to put it back the way it always was.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you do have to get a quorum of the neighborhood down there, because that's really who it affects. I guess the people going to the beach, it affects them too. And of course, they want all the parking they can get, free parking. So I guess the neighborhood may not have much pull with that, but yeah, I think that's great. On the people that were here about the Maple Avenue thing, I mean, I've been saying it for a year now. I've directed the town manager directly, it's a situation, literally just put reclaim, in the potholes. The potholes are like 2 or 3 feet deep. I mean, any place in town where there's potholes like that, you fix them. And it's been like that for a year. I don't understand, you can't do a big paving project and do a whole lane. You should have, when the whole job was done, it should have been put back the way it was, because we finally got that slip through lane. But now, and a couple of people in Maple Avenue, I don't get how they figure there's gonna be more traffic going down their road. It's a left turn, it's them, it's the people living on Maple Avenue turning in there. And if somebody does wanna use it as a cut through, they're gonna wait there and turn like they always have. The traffic coming at you is the same holdup, whether people get stuck behind you. If you wanna do it as a cut through, it doesn't, those people ain't gonna care if there's traffic stuck behind them, So, yeah, again, I'll say it again. We need to do some, it's a simple project, literally one dump truck load of reclaim down there, and it can kind of cure the problem, at least temporarily. You know, culverts and Scotto Hill Road and stuff, we can get rid of a skateboard park, build a pickleball court. It was first to put in the budget as $100,000. Then when the budget came out, it was 150. Now, I don't know, nobody's even said. There's been no vote. There's been no talk about it. It should have been probably a decision from the people, but the ordinances in town, last I knew, I thought it was 400, but I guess it's 600,000. The town manager or anybody else has free reign to spend any amount of money they want. I guess it doesn't matter. So I think a lot of people are upset that we're spending this money, we're getting rid of the skateboard park that maybe needed a little repair, would have been a lot cheaper. We could have repainted the tennis courts or something, we could have done it much more efficiently. And it's just all these little things. I know in a town budget like it is, a couple $100,000, but it adds up. It all adds up. And yeah, I just think that we really got to think this through from now on. It can't be doing these kind of things and spending that kind of money. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Just in response to the final comment, I don't have, my authorization comes from this council, so I don't have authority to spend money unless it's approved by you. So both those projects were approved and I'm executing the will of council.
They were approved, but I don't remember, I didn't approve it. There was never a vote in this body and I don't, and then the
We approved the
skateboard
budget.
park, I just found out about. You know, that was, who came up with that? Who did this? Was it a committee? Did the committee say that you should do this? I mean, who made the decision to not only have 1 or 2 pickleball courts, but 8 of them? And get rid of the skateboard park. All of a sudden this happened. It was just poof, overnight. And it was, construction was started right off.
Hey, Scott, we're beyond the purview of the town manager's report discussion now. I mean, you're getting into some broader issues that you've discussed
It was in his
before.
report about the pickleball.
It was in his report.
It was in his
and-
report.
And
He made a
Do you have a-
statement and I'm rebutting
do
it.
you have a,
Point of information, I think to Scott's
Good.
point, the way it worked last year was when the finance committee was reviewing the budget, we reviewed the CIP. That item was added in through the process. And then when we brought the budget forward and voted on it, I don't remember if you voted to approve the budget or not, but that was part of the package. And so that was voted on last year by the council to move the pickleball courts forward. And the skate park was at the time last year, I think there was already an item to remove the skate park because of the fact that it needed significant maintenance. And so that was also part of the budget. I think what happened is when community services later was trying to figure out where to put the pickleball courts, what to do with the skate park, they made the decision that the best place was going to be to, because we had to tear down the skate park, put the pickleball courts there and move the skate park to a different location. So I know it was discussed in probably the rec advisory board and some other places, but it definitely came through the council process, was voted on by the council, and I agree with Tom, he executed it based on the budget last year.
Just a rebuttal on that. The budget, a lot of things are just thrown in the budget. It's not even discussed about it. It's just thrown in. That's why I can't never vote for a budget, because there's always something like that. I could never vote for a budget because there's so many things in there that shouldn't be.
Well,
And so what you do is you throw it in and then you don't talk about it, discuss it with anybody. You just throw it in the budget and then we say, okay, everybody agree with the budget? Yep. And then all that stuff is thrown in.
in this particular case, this was discussed at the finance committee, and the council in the budget packet last year did receive a list of adjustments that were made like we did this year. So all of that information was in there. Now, whether everybody chose to read it and look at it is another thing, but it was part of the packet and made it available for the public. So maybe it was a miss on your part, but it was clearly out there in the public process, documented in many different forums. But
that's
again,
just-
what you could have done in retrospect is at the budget meeting, if there's ever anything like what happened at our last one where 2 CIP items came forward, that would have been the process through which, if you didn't support those things, you could have requested an amendment and removed it, and we would have deliberated it and made a decision. But again, that's up to every counselor to get into the weeds to the appropriate extent and find those things and advocate for what they think. And so I think last week was a really great example where 2 projects were questionable. And so we voted to ultimately remove those projects from the CIP. And so I think it worked as it was supposed to. It's just unfortunate maybe last year that this flew under the radar for you and we could have debated it more publicly if it was such a problem.
Yeah, but you got to get a second and a discussion, and I
you
usually
do have a
don't.
process, you're right.
Yeah, right.
Sorry,
Good
Scott,
thoughts.
I'll just throw in there quick that in that particular case, it was even a little more obvious because it was an added item. It wasn't part of the original budget or anything, and it got added in, so it came as a separate amendment to the original budget list. So it was maybe more obvious than a lot of the things, particularly things that have been in CIP for a few years and just in this particular year, they're getting there. So I think in that case, in that particular case, I think there was good visibility on it.
Thank you. Tom, I just have a quick question, nitty-gritty question. On the waste pickup, is it accurate that there will be curbside composting available? I think I might have seen that in one of the one of the updates?
That's their business. We're currently not under contract. They do it on a subscription basis, so that will certainly be an option. That's part of
Okay.
what they want to do. We may choose as a community to retain their services for, subsidize or pay for that. But at this point, that's not part of what will be provided unless you subscribe for it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I think I know of some interest around that. I think we'll just want to make sure that we get that information out there.
Yep, they'll be part of the communication.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the manager's report? Great. Moving on to standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. We'll start down here with Michelle. That's okay with you?
Yeah.
Or you can come up with your own order. All right.
Thank you. A couple of things. The communication committee with Larry, John and I kicked off our, I guess, inaugural communication ambassador meeting last Thursday. There's some people in the audience that attended. We had 15 people that joined us for a couple of hours, and just it was really invigorating. We had people from all over town. We had people that had basically raised their hand and wanted to get more involved. A lot of it was triggered through the counselor conversations that we've been doing the last 6 months. And I quit counting, but I think we have like 50 plus new ideas on how to enhance communication in town. So we're going to be busy. And our next communication meeting is Monday evening from 5:30 to 7:30 in Tom's conference room. And we invited that whole group that came last week, all 15. So we have people coming to continue helping us to sort of formulate more of a communication strategy and high impact action items going forward, so that we can continue to involve people and increase transparency. And just the ideas were amazing. So it was probably the best meeting I've had in the 6 months I've been on the council. I was just very excited about it. So that's happening. And I think that's it.
Great, thanks, John.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, one, I want to thank Michelle for facilitating, because she did a great job, and this was really her idea that came out, and it was a very good conversation. I think the things that I appreciated most was, one, we kind of went around the room asking people what they loved about Scarborough, and there's so much to love about Scarborough. And then we asked what they would change with if they had a magic wand. And what I recall was really 3 things that struck me was, 1, property tax relief continues to come up of how do we make sure we're, addressing Scarborough and property tax, which is why I think it's important we continue to push on this county local option sales tax. 2 is growth, which again doesn't surprise us, which we just spent a lot of time in our workshop on. The 3rd was kind of nice to hear, but surprising, which I think a lot of people were saying that one of the things that they wish they could change is some of the discussion on social media and how people tend to behave on social media in terms of, when we're in a room and we engage with each other, we treat each other differently and with more respect. And when people use social media and tend to maybe put aside some of like the common courtesies that we would give somebody in a face-to-face conversation. So again, I think it was nice to really sit and be face-to-face and have that conversation and engage and get that feedback. But as Michelle said, really big list. It's in our communications agenda packet, I think, all of those ideas. So if other counselors are interested in looking at it, or if the public is, we'll be looking through that list again and trying to maybe pick a couple. For the council, just a reminder, we're trying to do tabling on June 9th during the election. So I sent out a sign-up sheet to try and get people to sign up for time slots. I know, Corey, you're going to be out of town. But again, it's just a really great way to engage and meet with the public while we're there. What we'll have there is information on property tax relief. So how people can sign up for the town's program, but also other statewide programs that are available, to just make sure that that's available and known by the public. We'll have copies of our council goals, just in anticipation of our goal setting workshop, so that we can share that with the public, maybe get some ideas, feedback on what they think is important, and continue to drive signups for the newsletter. So those are really kind of the key things that we're trying to do while we're at the election. For transportation, again, we talked mostly about the Jones Creek pilot project, which we've already talked about. We did talk about council goals, looking at them and where the transportation committee fits. I think we kind of landed on what would be really helpful as we work on the CIP goal to try and prioritize projects over the next 20 years, to try and get some of their input on, again, a lot of these really large, massive transportation projects, and get some feedback or have them discuss those and give a recommendation that can feed into that particular goal. I asked again for them to consider reviewing the traffic calming policy, which was something that we talked about at our council goals, not as a goal, but as something we wanted to kind of revisit now that it's been in play for a while. Really to one of the speakers' comments about how there's a provision in there that while the entire neighborhood may support something, there's essentially veto authority for an abutter to not allow something to happen. And so I think that's the piece I really said we'd like feedback on. Do we want to keep doing that? And then Scott, and to the speaker who spoke, we did talk about, for a future agenda, bringing in somebody from GPCOG to talk about slip lanes. So like at Maple Avenue and at Eastern Trail, really to make sure we really understand the safety aspects from the experts. And so my hope is we can have somebody relatively soon with those two areas in mind. Would love for you to attend, Scott, so you can hear from them, because again, I think a lot of the reason, my understanding why those slip lanes kind of disappeared was predominantly for safety. Very interesting though, that we got some data by one of the speakers today that shows that it has created a safety issue, it seems, more than it was before. So I think it would be really interesting to continue the conversation. So I don't think it's a dead conversation, Scott. I personally want more information before I would want to support further action. Yeah. So that's going to be at hopefully a future transportation meeting. That's all I have.
Thanks, John. Bill?
Scarborough Housing Alliance met on the 27th. The number one topic, principal focus was the housing assessment study. Thank you. And we engaged in a preliminary discussion of the scope of work. HRNA Advisors as a sole source for this work was favorably reviewed because of their past history. The Sustainability Committee also met last week. We discussed its support for the Metro Transit proposal, which I think everyone's pretty familiar with. And we discussed data centers, the data center moratorium, and the committee expects to have a role in the zoning amendments that are probably going to be considered during the moratorium by us.
Thanks, Bill. Long Range Planning has not met since our last meeting. They meet a week from Friday on the 12th. They'll be continuing their work on zoning district consolidation. And then at our workshop earlier, I think we created a new pipeline of work for them related to some modifications that are at least indirectly related to the state legislation, but also kind of revisiting some of the use area designations in certain parts of town. That's all I have. Larry?
I've got kind of a combination between the school building project and finance. We had a really significant win with significant help from Tom and staff and legal counsel. This school committee, similar to the past ones, is made up of staff, school administration, and community members. One of the community members in there, Matt Garrett, brought forward questions about the traffic impact fees and how they would apply to these projects. And that because it's a municipal project, the planning board acts in an advisory role and rather than a decision role. And so with Tom's help, we checked with legal counsel and determined that we will have the ability to waive the impact fees on the school projects. So that's a budgeted, it's in the budget for somewhere between $500,000 and $550,000 that we're going to be able to remove from the cost of that project. And that'll be introduced to finance next week on the 11th. So that was a great win for the schools and for the town in general. And it's just kind of our first start out of the school committee of looking for opportunities for savings. And this one in particular has no impact on educational value or the design of the building or anything. So that was really exciting.
Thanks, Larry. Scott?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So moving on, item 10, resolutions and proclamations, none at this time. And that takes us to public hearings, starting with 11.1, order number 26-046, a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the request for a 180-day temporary moratorium titled Town of Scarborough Ordinance Establishing a Temporary Moratorium on Data Centers. Just a quick recap and intro on this. I'm not going to read the whole thing again. It's in everybody's materials and it's been publicly posted. It's been out there. I will say that it was, we got drafting support and vetting from the town's legal counsel on it. So I'm comfortable that we're in good standing in a good place there. If this is approved this evening, it will be effective as of April 1st. And we'll get into discussion later, but with that, I will open up the public hearing. Just ask those who like to speak to state their name, their address or affiliation, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less and direct them to the council. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Greg Braun. I'm an attorney in Westbrook. I am here today representing my clients 121 and 151 Two Rod Road, LLC, and their president, Daniel Dickinson. I am here in opposition to this emergency moratorium order 26-046. It may be a foregone conclusion. I heard Councilmember William Donovan speak related to his special committee and how they will be considering ordinances during this emergency moratorium. That being said, I am still here to speak my client's position in opposition. We have submitted 3 writings explaining and outlining our position. 2 in May, one from myself, one from my client, and then another in anticipation of today's meeting. And I would ask respectfully that those be made part of tonight's record. I won't belabor or repeat them in full here. But what I will do is just state generally 3 facts, which I think are important for the room and for the committee. The first is my clients have been before the town's own plan development process for over a year. The planning board approved the first phase in May of last year, and their master plan was submitted on April 20th of this year and is currently pending before the town right now. So there is exactly one data center application in the town of Scarborough that is pending. It's been pending for over a year. And there's currently the phase 2 portion of that application pending before the town as we speak. The second fact is that there is currently no data center operating in the town of Scarborough. And every single impact you're going to discuss tonight is prospective in nature. The town is not experiencing a single one of the conditions outlined in your emergency moratorium due to a data center located in this town. And third, this is important, the town already has high technology performance standards on the books. Not only that, you adopted them in March of 2025, just a year ago. And it is under those brand new ordinances that my client has an application that has been pending for over a year before your town. So I've heard a lot about spending money and what we're spending it on today. I'm going to suggest that passing this moratorium in such a way as to try to prohibit the one and only pending application before the town is a poor choice. It will require my client to take litigation on a project that is already planned to go before numerous meetings, public hearings, and is required, right, to meet numerous performance standards to be issued and approved. And so for those reasons, I would ask this council not to enact the order, or at the least, not to aim it at applications that are already pending. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sophie Warren, a state representative for Scarborough. I want to thank the town council, staff, and members of our community who have taken such an interest and engaged on this issue. I'm here tonight to express my support for the moratorium and further to encourage us as a community to see that this pause remain in place until the state regulatory framework is set up. For the past 6 years, I've had the privilege of representing my hometown in the Maine legislature. And as a member of that legislature's Energy Committee, I've worked with colleagues this past year on legislation addressing data center development. We spent months in public hearings, work sessions, and conversations with experts trying to understand potential impacts to our electric grid, to water resources, land use planning, and local communities. Ultimately, we concluded after months of public discussion that Maine needed additional time at that state level and the expertise to build out a comprehensive regulatory framework, which is why first the committee, then the full legislature, including some of our Republican colleagues, supported an 18-month pause while that work was completed. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed that bill, which is why I support Scarborough adopting a temporary moratorium as well. The state has the agencies, staff, and technical expertise to answer many difficult questions about who pays for electric infrastructure, how we protect ratepayers from higher costs, how we safeguard water resources, including those during droughts or emergencies, and how these facilities fit within Maine's longer-term climate and land use goals. Those are questions that I do believe deserve statewide answers before individual communities are asked to make sometimes permanent decisions up against sometimes some of the largest corporate interests in our country. And data centers ultimately may be a good fit for some Maine communities. I would probably remain concerned about the recent proposal considering the water table of the area and high well use in that particular part of Scarborough. Ultimately, though, until the state completes that work and establishes clear rules and protections in all these different facets of public policy, I do believe the prudent course is to pause and gather facts and allow that process to play out and perhaps have a role to play in that process, providing public comment and following along. I also just want to thank communities like ours and our leaders here tonight and neighboring towns, including yesterday, Gorham's work, stepping up, having these conversations in the absence of that clear state guidance. My hope is that over the next legislative session, we can provide that framework communities need, that I can be a part of it, and that until then, we can proceed thoughtfully, responsibly, and with those longer-term interests of our residents in mind by maintaining the pause until that work is complete. Thank you all so much for your leadership. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hello. My name's Bonnie. I live on Woodside Drive. I'm going to actually talk to you guys about South Portland for a second. Trust me, this will all tie in. All right, this has to do with Scarborough. So I grew up in South Portland. I recently married Sophie Warren, and now Scarborough is my home. It's where we all live, where Sophie and I plan to raise a family, where we hope to invest, grow, and build our future together. As someone from a neighboring community, I have always loved Scarborough. It's a privilege to call this place home. Like many Southern Mainers, I grew up driving by and looking at the massive petroleum storage tanks that line South Portland's waterfront. For most of my life, they were simply part of the landscape. And in my senior year of high school, I interviewed the city manager. And at that time and point, there had been reports of the harm that the emissions coming from these petroleum takes were causing, and they had just put into place a clean air ordinance. Then, fast forward a good 12 years, in 2026, recent reports show that these same oil tanks have shown an increased level of benzene levels that cause cancerous, that emit cancerous chemicals into the air. And if anyone has really taken the time to drive through South Portland, these tanks are in our neighborhoods, feet away, like just feet away from schools, homes, parks. And the people who approved those tanks decades ago likely believed that they were making the right decision. They saw economic opportunity, they saw growth, and what they could not fully see were the long-term consequences. Today, South Portland is still living with those consequences. There have been countless efforts to reduce the harm, improve monitoring, address community concerns, yet the problem remains. As someone who grew up there and who has family there, I believe South Portland leaders failed to adequately protect future generations from risks they did not fully understand. Which brings me to Scarborough. These proposed data centers are our generation's petroleum tanks. I'm not saying that they are identical. I'm saying that once again, we are being asked to make permanent decisions based on incomplete information. We are standing at the beginning of a major technological shift. While there may be benefits, we still do not fully understand the long-term impacts of our energy grid, on our energy grid, water resources, environment, infrastructure, or quality of life. And it is for those reasons that I would love for the moratorium to stay in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elaine Williams and I live on Old Blue Point Road. I want to say good evening to the council members and the residents of Scarborough here tonight. I am here to express my support of the moratorium on data centers here in Scarborough. I know it was mentioned that these are some of the things we're talking about are, supposed future things that could happen. And yet I know that we have all seen the research and stories of confirmed devastation, disruption, and resource depletion that data centers have caused in communities around the nation. I would imagine that many of you have seen the video of the woman who turns on her faucet and like nothing comes out, right? And last summer, that was me. And this is pre-data center. This is just the drought that we experienced over the summer. And I would just like reach for the faucet out of habit and nothing would come out. And, that's before a data center increasing the demand for water. We were using bottled water for everything, brushing our teeth, washing our dishes. And our well has only just refilled this spring. So even through the winter, we were fairly low because of the water table. For wells that are already struggling to replenish themselves, I worry that the water resource burden of a data center would put citizens of Scarborough at an insurmountable deficit. We looked into some of the options for that, right? And often it's just you'd like dig a deeper well. And aside from that cost being potentially not attainable for many residents of the town, deeper wells also disturb contaminants and deep water brine that make the water unsafe for consumption. Furthermore, as research done by scientists at Columbia University, the University of California, and Virginia Tech has shown, accessing and relying on deeper groundwater can cause land levels to sink. If the water is not able to replenish itself, the land sinks to occupy the space the water once held. I don't know if any of you have tried to drive through the marsh during high tide after a lot of rain, but you can't. You have to go on like a 20-minute detour just to get home. And so I think that struggle is already something that the town of Scarborough is discussing how to address. And the marshes, I live right on the marsh. It's a beautiful area. I moved here during the pandemic, and what I found was a really warm and welcoming community. Anytime you're walking down the Eastern Trail, people are happy to chat about the egrets on the marsh or the lady slippers that are blooming, or even just like smile at you and be outside in the sunshine. And I think it's that community connection that sustained us through a global pandemic, and fostering that will sustain us into the future. Time and again, data center advocates have touted the economic benefits of these large-scale developments, but the benefits always fall short of what is promised. And I think that really our community members, our residents, the creatures in the marshes, really should be the focus for our community moving forward. And so I urge you to support the moratorium, because what benefits us in the long term is having access to resources that we have sort of already limited here in Scarborough, and the people that live here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greeting, town council members and neighbors. My name is Tristan from Old Blue Point Road, and I'd like to take a moment to share this human-generated message and enthusiastic support of a moratorium on data center development in our community. The veto that came from the governor this spring after bipartisan work in the Maine legislature was gutting to me. As a resident of West Scarborough without streetlights, I'm lucky to view the night sky with less light pollution than I was formerly accustomed to in previous residences. And I'm so grateful over these 11 years of being here to be close to beautiful trails, beaches, and my fragrant neighbor, the salt marsh. But my housemates and I are also at the mercy, like so many others, of a dug well. Rising electricity costs, increasing traffic, and a consistent treble of mosquitoes during our most humid months. But I would gladly endure the hum of a mosquito over the sharp and enduring sting of a hyperscale data center in our collective backyard. Mosquitoes feed bats. Data centers feed the insatiable appetite of the AI empire. They manufacture our dependence on convenience and enhance the imposition of inhumane tech design. The steep promises of economic transformation come at a cost, and there are widely available critiques from people who have been impacted by large-scale data centers all over the U.S. in their own communities. However, it has been shared that development proposals to date here in our town are low impact, self-generating, place virtually zero additional load on the electrical grid, won't impact traffic, offer low to no processed water consumption, and will create hundreds, if not thousands, of new jobs. An offer that seems too good to be true probably is. My concerns about water usage, the heat generation, electricity costs, pollutants, and emissions are not assuaged by the grandiose promises of those who stand to reap the most benefit from data centers. Fuel cell technology is an improvement over former less efficient technology, but these things are not impervious to performance degradation, material fatigue, and resource extraction. No system that fuels this level of consumption is really self-sustaining, and certainly doesn't come close to the kind of regenerative design that we really need. We as neighbors deserve something beyond an opaque promise of meaningful public benefit. We deserve to understand what awaits our material conditions, human and environmental health, and both the expected short and long-term impacts of this kind of development. I don't know what the future holds for our human-generated content or when big data will inevitably come for my job, but I do hold out hope for the deep data that is only present in our human intelligence and the regenerative power of human relationships. I hold hope that this council will pass this moratorium and go beyond that to really consider whether this scale of a data center is really in service to the people and habitat of Scarborough. Thank you.
Thank you.
It does move. My name is Ellie Sato. I'm coming from Gorham, Maine, and I'm proud to represent my hometown as the state representative in the Maine House. And I'm also very proud that my town voted in favor of a 180-day moratorium last night, so this is great news. And so I'm here today to advocate the support for passing this ordinance of a 180-day moratorium here in Scarborough. And the reason is the world that we live in today. I'm 29, I just turned 29, And one of the concerns that I have is looking at a world that is rising in temperature. We're seeing flooding, we're seeing seawaters rising, we're seeing our water usage being very difficult to access, as we've heard from previous speakers about droughts. We are seeing a massive impact of extreme weather and the impacts of climate change in our world. And on top of that, as someone who got Facebook at 13 years old, we're seeing our algorithms deeply impact young people and next generation in how we are interacting with our communities, how we're interacting with people. And we're now seeing ChatGPT and so many Gemini and so many other AI taking over our thought processes about people using ChatGPT to write emails and write essays. And that is a concerning world that I'm growing up in, that I'm going to age in for the next 70 years, hopefully. And so what I'm thinking about is not the next 10 years. I'm thinking about the next 100 years, the next 200 years for the world that we are giving to the next generation that they're going to inherit after us. And right now that seems really scary. And so that's why I think right now taking a pause to think about the real impact of data centers is so critical, because as is also said before, these decisions are going to impact generations and generations to come. And so coming in with a clear head, knowing all the issues, knowing all the impacts, and having complete transparency in what we're really getting into, I think is going to be really, really key. And so I hope that you will vote in support of this ordinance. And I want to thank you for allowing a Gorham resident to speak at your town council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alberta Follensby. I live on Arborview Lane in Scarborough. I've been in town about 27 years, and I urge you to support this moratorium and actually make it longer. It's not a lot of time, especially when we're turning it back to April and factoring summer in. It's not a lot of time to figure out a lot of stuff. Right now, these data centers are gobbling water. They're ruining the fabric of people's lives. I don't know why we would be in a hurry to rush into something that would take maybe never to undo. So I ask you to please consider this moratorium. Please consider making it longer, and please consider the impact on everybody about this. Everyone that's spoken has made excellent points. I'm just so worried for the town. We don't need this trouble. So please work really hard. Please consider making this a longer period of time to work out this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Scarborough Town Council. My name is Sarah Woodbury, and I'm the Legislative Director at Maine Conservation Voters. MCV is a statewide nonprofit organization with over 13,000 members, including almost 200 here in Scarborough. And I wanted to offer some brief comments in support of the data center moratorium. MCV doesn't want to ban data centers, but we do want to make sure that there are guardrails in place to protect the health and environment of our communities. MCV has serious concerns about the environmental impacts of data centers, and we need to make sure that we have sufficient regulations in place to protect the environment. As more of these facilities are built across the country, we are seeing them have real-world impacts on the health and environment of their host communities. Data centers currently account for about 4.4% of all electricity that is used in the US, and communities with these data centers are seeing significant increases in their utility rates. A study by Bloomberg estimates that communities near data centers have seen an increase in their power bills by about 267% over the past 5 years. Maine ratepayers are already paying some of the higher bills than other parts of the country and cannot afford to see those rates increase any further. We also need to look at the water resources necessary to run a data center facility. A single mid-sized data center can use upwards of 300,000 gallons of water a day. This is the same amount as a small town. Maine experienced a severe drought. You've heard about that, and we should not be allowing these large companies to come in and utilize our much needed water resources without protections in place. Additionally, it's something I've heard that has not been brought up. These facilities use PFAS to cool their equipment. Even in closed loop data center systems are going to have some sort of discharge, whether it's air or water. Every large electrical facility uses PFAS, and Maine is already dealing with a huge PFAS crisis. We have seen farmers lose their farms. Several communities have high levels of contamination in their water. And so adding a facility that uses these toxic chemicals is something we want to be cautious about when we're bringing them into communities. For folks that don't know, the governor did sign an disappointment in the veto of LD 307. But she did sign an executive order setting up a data center advisory council. They held their first meeting today. I think, I think it behooves the towns across the state of Maine to give that council time to do their work. Because these are huge, huge issues. Towns can't really regulate electricity and all of that type of stuff. So giving the town time to let that data center council do its work, to let the legislature hopefully do its work next session and pass something that does not get vetoed, I think will help towns be able to make sure that there are guardrails in place if they decide they want these facilities. So I think a moratorium is a good place to start. I know that you are stymied by state law and can only do 180 days at a time, but there are extensions. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Happy Pride Month for those who celebrate. I'm Suzanne Foley Ferguson, and I urge you also to adopt this moratorium. And I also agree with Bertie, you may need more than 90 days. I just sent you 4 different emails. My niece has been working for 2 years on issues of data center in her community in Howell, Michigan. And she has provided me with a bunch of information. I only sent you a small piece of that. Her community, because of the public outcry, created their own official committee, which I think this town of Scarborough should consider, not just pausing as a moratorium, but also our own committee. They are currently creating an ordinance, and they have that in draft form. I also sent that. The biggest issues that people here are obviously well informed, but I don't think everybody really understands. Water, power, and noise, those are the big 3. And while the Trump administration dismantles ocean monitoring systems, guts the environmental protections, opens up national parks, we here in Scarborough spend millions of dollars to protect the environment. You know why? Because our citizens ask you guys to protect the environment, and I spent 25 years doing that. Rolling Stone reported in an article in 2025 that data centers using groundwater for cooling, they concentrate the nitrate pollutions, and some of them up to 8 times the safe limits. It is true that we don't have the data, but we can protect ourselves with our performance standards that we don't have right now. They consume water is a problem because of the use as well. What happens when our wells do run dry? And if the people in West Scarborough need water, does that mean that the cost to extend the sewer or the water to those residents is going to be on the citizens, or is that going to be the data center? When the state legislature adopted the moratorium, I guess I'm going to be the 4th person to say this, Mills was on my blank list, and she lost my vote. I got to tell you that. I moved away. I urge you not to fall for that lure of easy money either, because a lot of these are financed with TIFs, and the tax revenue sounds appealing, but it's a major financial concentration risk. They're being overbuilt. 80% of China's are unused. 80%. And these centers can take 10 years to build, and then with the technology, they may not even be useful. How fast tech is going. These AI centers have all the money in the world to pay for clean energy rather than swamping the grid and forcing the ratepayers to pay for it, which is exactly what is happening all over the country. There's so many unknowns, and I'm trying to wrap up real quick. I'm flipping through here. I spent 25 years, like I said, working on trying to protect the environment in Scarborough. And one of the points we gave for aquifers on our evaluation point, and everybody, we kept saying, what are we doing this for? What are we doing this for? Well, guess what? It's here. We protected, or we tried to protect aquifers because they feed the wells for the people, and the community should not bear the financial cost of any problems that should have. So I hope we're not going to, I encourage you to adopt this. I guess there's one more thing I want to say. I'm whipping through here. Noise is a leading cause of citizen lawsuits, by the way. Talk about lawsuits, citizen lawsuits. In Virginia, the HOAs actually include attorney retainer fees in their HOA dues because they're in constant litigation over the noise. And I sent you some information about that as well. So maybe the real estate agents here in Scarborough ought to start considering putting money in retainer fees. Do not be afraid of someone who comes in here and says, you know, I'm going to litigate, because there's all kinds of litigation when there is a data center here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
April Hill, Maple Avenue. When I first moved to my house 17 years ago, I live very close to Route 1, and I thought I heard drag racing on Route 1, but it turned out it was Beach Ridge Road racing. It's a speedway. And I actually enjoyed it. Like it was, you know, there had a beginning and an end. It was very predictable, and I knew it represented. I have a neighbor who races, and it was fun. When the shooting range is going, I could hear the shooting range where I live on Maple Avenue, which I think both of those are maybe like at least 5 miles away. Sound travels. And so these data centers make noise. And also I heard the nature of the noise is more of a vibration that travels for miles. And so, you know, some people might think, oh, well, it's not in my backyard. You know, I don't have to worry about it. It's actually going to be in all of our backyards in one capacity or another. And so I fully support this moratorium, and actually I support a ban. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tammy Mittman, and I live on Beach Ridge Road. I'm here to urge you to vote for the moratorium, and I want to blend in one other thing that was discussed tonight, which was the possibility of a new form of revenue from a sales tax. I recently completed a climate course, and one of the things that was pointed out is that as towns that have extraordinary coastal exposure suffer the effects of climate change, and as those properties are damaged and the property values go down, if the town is only relying on property taxes, the town will not have the revenue to mitigate and recover. So right now we have very high property taxes, but as the effects of climate change start rolling in and we get more inundation and we get more storms, unfortunately, the values of many properties are going to go down, and so were our property taxes. And the reason I mention that in the context of this question of the data center is these data centers use a tremendous amount of energy, and they are contributing to the problem, the ultimate problem that we're going to have, which is much bigger than a data center. So,
Thank you.
Denise Hamilton, Two Rod Road. My husband and I want to speak in strong support of the proposed moratorium on data centers, and will believe the timing of the recent events is something we should not ignore. There's a saying that sometimes things happen for a reason, and in this case, I think that couldn't be more prevalent. While some may view the application to be incomplete and rejected for lacking key required documents as procedural, we see it as an opportunity, one that gave this time something invaluable: time. Time to pause, time to step back, and time to ask a much larger question that we might otherwise have been forced to answer too quickly. Do we want data centers here at all, regardless of how they are powered? This is not just about energy sources or technology. It's about scale, land use, infrastructure demands, water use, noise, and long-term impacts on our community character and natural resources. Once these facilities are built, there is no going back. We want to thank Representative Sophie Warren for her knowledge, leadership, and willingness to support the town in bringing this moratorium request forward. We also want to thank Autumn for her continued hard work and dedication in looking out for what is best for Scarborough, even when the decisions are complex and difficult. And acknowledge Tom for his interview with Maine Public that helped bring clarity and public attention to this important issue. For us personally, supporting this moratorium is not just a policy position. It is deeply personal. The proposed project that was submitted incomplete is located in our neighborhood, and its access easement is literally in our backyard. To be clear, supporting a moratorium is only the beginning. We not only support this pause, We support serious consideration of a permanent ban on data centers in Scarborough the more I've researched them. We have an opportunity right now to define the kind of community we want to be before we commit ourselves to infrastructure we may regret for generations. Thank you.
Thank you. See, we have at least one online.
iPhone, you can talk.
Oh, my name is Matthew Keith, and I live at 8 Pleasant Ave. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I don't know why I was asking if you can always hear me. Thank you. I will join the chorus of people calling for you to support this moratorium. I think in general, I think I will likely err and land on the side long term of not supporting a data center in Scarborough in particular. But as long as we use AI and even a quick Google search, you got the AI thing at the top, there'll need to be data centers somewhere. And, maybe eventually that could be Scarborough potentially. But even if it was, the real crux of this that has been so well elaborated, and I think you all really understand, is that we just don't know enough. This is such a new thing and it's going so quick. And all it takes is one quick Google search to see tons of examples of how communities suffer and the data centers benefit off of that suffering of the community and profit off of it. And if we are going to have one in Scarborough, it's important that we take our time, educate ourselves, do it thoughtfully. And so for those reasons, I hope you all support this. And I look forward to coming along this journey and learning more with you all and figuring out what's right for Scarborough here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Before we move into discussion, if I could ask staff, if I could put you on the spot, to maybe, for the benefit of everyone here, provide a little clarity around the status of the application that's been mentioned. And there was an assertion that it's been in front of the town for a number of years. My understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that the specific proposal for a data center was only submitted recently, right around the time that the statewide moratorium was vetoed. Is that correct?
That's true. Planning director's here, but perhaps why don't you take the podium? We have consulted with legal counsel, and we're certainly pleased to have legal counsel address you directly. There's an important distinction, though. Our process requires site inventory and a lot of kind of preliminary work regarding the property. I think what's really important here is the actual application for the use in question.
Correct. This is part of a planned development in the light industrial, and what we approved, the planning board approved last May, was actually a site inventory. And there has been no mention of the use of a data center, only discussion of an industrial use because it is zoned light industrial. And so that came in, that was the first time that has actually been discussed or shown.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I think, at least speaking for myself, this is about more than that application, but I wanted to get that point of fact clarified before we moved on. Anyone want to kick us off with discussion? John?
Yeah, I do support this. I think it's the right thing to do. I think, as many of the speakers said, this decision will have significant impact for generations. And I think it's wise for us to take a step back, understand a little bit more. This technology is changing rapidly. Like, even if you look at data centers over the past 20, 30 years, what they were then and what they are now are not one and the same. I do think our high technology use in our zoning was also put in 20 years ago when it was different. And I think this is the part of, the world that we don't always control, that things are changing. And so that definition, while in theory maybe fits this use, I think what this use is so unique now that it really merits probably its own use in our zoning or clarification. Personally, I think it's important that the state goes through their process and they need to figure a lot of things out, it sounds like. That would behoove of us to wait until that work is done. I personally feel like we don't need to necessarily wait for that because I feel like it doesn't make sense to have a data center in Scarborough. And I think it's mostly because of our location, our proximity to the coast. We're surrounded by marsh and wetland. And so from an environmental perspective, which is super important for our community and our identity, I think this is just not a good location for it. I get that they will need to be somewhere in our country or in our state, but I just don't think Scarborough, given our geography, and our values, is the right place for something like this. And so I would be fine moving swiftly in terms of adjusting our zoning, removing it completely. And again, that might be, as some speaker said, something we do for the next 5 years, because again, the way technology is changing, there might be new uses down the road. And at the time, if that ever happens, the council in the future could always make it a qualified use. So to me, it's not a forever ban. It's for right now for what it is and for likely what it will be in the near term. I think just keeping it out of Scarborough would be the best path and the swiftest path. I do feel bad for the applicant because this is not only the first time we've done a moratorium that impacts them, it's the second time. They're clearly on the leading edge, trying to do great things with their property. And so that zoning still has so many other offerings within it that allows them to do things that I think can be good for them and also good for the community. So I would encourage them to continue to explore other uses for that property. But I just think data centers are not the right thing in that location, especially because of the water issues that have been discussed. I shared last time I went to the Warren's house and looked in their well, and so many neighbors in that area talk about concerns around water quality and water availability. And so I think just knowing that these facilities really do damage to water and the environment, I think is just something we need to take very seriously. And so I'm open to exploring, learning, but personally, I'm willing to move swiftly and just ban them completely from our community.
Thanks, John. Larry?
Really well said, John. Thanks. I think, summed up a lot of it for me. This is a perfect use for a moratorium where we don't have all the facts. And so I have absolutely support the moratorium. I think I'm with John. I believe that I'll come to support a ban based on the physical attributes of the town and what we can and can't support. So this is really very easy for me on the moratorium to use that time to explore, learn more about the impacts, which I feel like have been really well represented by the community and supported by other communities that have already gone through this. I don't feel like we need to allow a data center to see what the impacts might be. And so I feel very comfortable supporting this. And like I said, I expect the outcome would be that we do something to keep them out of town permanently.
Thanks. Scott?
As you know, like Council Anderson said, this has been going on and I have supported this person because of them going through such a rigmarole, and it's been such a torturous thing dealing with the town. I know all about that and bureaucracy and everything. But and I voted to support him on the last vote. But boy, it's like taking a stick and poking a hornet's nest. I mean, this is, and I tell him that, it's like, what are you got to come up with something better than this. He has said that there's new technology, that they're not going to be on the grid. They're going to have an alternate, power source, and they're going to have a recirculation system, so they won't use as much water. It's going to cool it by, there's new technology. But I don't know, we don't know for sure if it's been proven yet. And I think he really needs to get some real evidence and a data center that's been built that has this technology. And maybe there hasn't been one built yet, I don't know. But he says this technology is there, and if it is so, what he says, then, you know, maybe it would work. Maybe it, you know, would be a good thing, and, but maybe, like you said, maybe not for Scarborough. You don't want it in your backyard, you put it somewhere else. I guess the one that Janet Mills talked about up in Jay, that community wanted it. They wanted, that mill was closing, they wanted the jobs, they wanted the tax break. You talk about tax breaks, I mean, you know, there'll be a huge tax on this, so it would help with your property taxes. But there's a double-edged sword there, you know, so what is it worth? And, you know, much as you don't want taxes. So, yeah, that's my feelings on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Anyone else? Michelle?
Sure, thanks. I agree with what everyone has said, and I've been following data centers for a while. I think at one point, my birth state of Virginia had the most, and there's been a lot of buyer's remorse, and I've watched people interviewed, and they're trying to sit outside, and they're vibrating in their lawn chair, and I think overall, Scarborough, I think the best thing about Scarborough is the natural beauty, whether it's the ocean, the marsh, the trails, the environment, and I just don't see any reason why we would take a risk to do damage to any of that. And I think on the health side, you know, there's been a lot of things that have happened in our history where people think that, you know, a nuclear power plant's okay, or, you know, something else is okay. And then 10 years later, you know, all these folks are having health issues and cancer issues. And I just don't think that it's worth the risk. And I actually was disappointed that the governor did what she did, and I support just banning them.
Thank you. Bill, you have anything?
I would support the moratorium because it represents a totally inappropriate risk for us to go forward without knowing the answers to what's going to happen. We'll spend the next 180 days doing a careful review, but I think what we're going to find, like many of the speakers indicated, there's serious risks to the community. And our business is to protect the community, and that's why we are going to vote for this moratorium tonight.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I'll try to keep it pretty brief. I don't have anything earth-shattering to add beyond what's already been well said. But first of all, I do feel very strongly that this is, as Larry said, the perfect use of the moratorium. I think we're well inside the lines on that legally, as was already noted. And there are times when we need to be proactive. We don't want to wait for something that can't be reversed to potentially cause harm. You know, when I was running for council 2 years ago, and I sat here during a candidates forum, and one of the questions was, what would you propose doing about climate change of the environment? And I made the point that, well, when you're at the local level, the municipal level, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you have control over. So the focus should really be on, you know, what we can do at the local level, and focusing on resiliency, and maybe taking some small steps with some of our ordinances. This is a case where it really goes beyond that, and as has been noted, really gets, there's a direct line to climate change. And as John said, you know, that, and one of the commenters noted, this use does exist out in the world, and I'm not naive enough to think that it won't continue to exist for at least the foreseeable future. But for the reasons stated, I think Scarborough is a particularly poor fit for this type of use, given our geography and our vulnerability. In terms of the timing, I think 180 days is appropriate. There's a reason why there are caps on how long you can do a moratorium. There really needs to be a defined period during which the town really does its diligence. You can't just be kicking the can down the road. And I fully expect that we'll do that. I also think it's in everyone's interest, including landowners, to have a speedy resolution so that they're not left hanging out there. I'm certainly skeptical of the use in general, but regardless of where we land with it, I think I'm glad to see that there's agreement here that we want to do it expediently. And I'd like to thank all the commenters, everyone who weighed in as well.
Thank you.
If there are no other comments, I will go ahead and call the vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Moving on to item 11.2, order number 26-048, 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new request for a food handler's license from Coastal Curry located at 300 Gallery Boulevard, Unit D.
Thank
Little
you.
shifting of gears here.
Yes, this is a
Tony?
new application as noted in the order. It requires a public hearing and action before the town council. The application has been vetted through all the proper channels, and the town clerk's office is requesting approval.
Thank you. I will open the public hearing on this item. Anyone would like to speak? All right, seeing none. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this? John?
While pizza is my #1 favorite food, curry is my second. So I'm super excited that we have an establishment like this coming to Scarborough. I don't think we have anything like this
I
in
don't think we
town.
do. I was thinking that offhand. I
Yeah,
can't think of it.
good options
Yeah.
in South
Yeah.
Portland, but nothing here. So super excited.
Great.
Well said.
Michelle?
I just want to make a suggestion that when people bring these to the council, I think that we should have to do a taste testing before we vote.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
I second.
Anyone else? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 11.4, order number 26-049, 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new request for a mobile food vendor's license from Jim Allen doing business as Smokin' Dad's Barbecue.
Again, this is a new application which requires a public hearing and action before the town council. Their application has been vetted and all the proper departments agree it's in order, and the town clerk's office is requesting approval.
Great, thank you. I will open the public hearing on this. Anyone? Anyone want to speak on this? Seeing none? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Beat him.
John?
My third favorite food is barbecue. And so this is also super exciting. We had Moe's. Moe's is part of Scarborough on Friday, which is great. So great to have another barbecue place in town. Seeing that it's called Smoking Dads, if they need any smoking dads to work it, I know somebody who might be available this November, so.
No comment.
I was trying to go first on this one. I didn't comment on the curry deal, but that barbecue, I'm all in on.
I'm just glad I got the opportunity to read that out loud. Anyone else? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Old business, none at this time. New business, item number 13.1, order number 26-050. First reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendment to chapter 1016 garage yard sale ordinance.
Yes, this
Tony?
is more of a housekeeping issue. Last year, the council approved the increase in the yard sale fees back in, I think it was April of 2025, and at the time, we didn't bring the ordinance. So this is just a housekeeping issue to bring the ordinance in line with the chapter 3.
Okay.
And they recommend approval.
Thank you. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Scott?
I don't agree with the ordinance to start with. I think somebody should be able to have a yard sale if they want a yard sale, so I'm gonna vote against it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I will call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? 6-1. Thank you. Sorry, 5-1. Sorry. Item number 13.2, order number 26-051. Act on the request from the police chief to designate the community services facility, the hub, located at 418 Payne Road as a drug-free zone. We have someone from the
Yes.
police department.
Yes, this evening we have Deputy Chief Grover, who would just like to provide some background.
Yes. Chief Holmquist sends his apologies, still recovering from surgery. But this proposal's to designate the Community Services Hub as a drug-free safe zone. A drug-free safe zone means an athletic park or an athletic field, park, playground, or recreational facility that is designated as a drug-free safe zone by a municipality. An individual who is charged with drug offenses within 1,000 feet of a designated drug-free safe zone is subject to a higher level of crime classification for an offense. The designation is the same designation that the schools automatically receive. The location needs to be frequented by minors in order to receive the designation. Designated zones must be posted with informational signs, and there's an example of the signs that need to be used that's in your packet this evening.
Thank you. Any public comment on this? Seeing none?
I would just note that based on the police department's ongoing activity, just knowing our town, this area, kind of the Payne Road corridor, has really become over the last several years kind of a hotbed of activity of all sorts. So given our the existence of the hub there and the activities we have, and really the knowledge of what happens in the neighborhood, this seems like a totally appropriate designation.
Thanks, Tom. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Sure. Any discussion? John?
Just sorry for making you wait the whole time, Chief,
Yeah.
for this. I always feel bad when you guys are here.
Yeah, we should have moved them out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I couldn't.
Our fault.
Just here to
Yeah.
like see us.
Yeah, you thought we just missed us.
Yeah, I agree for the reasons Tom stated, the juxtaposition of sort of the use of some of the activity around there and the presence of the hub. I think it makes sense, and it's a great initiative. Anyone else? All in favor? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. 6-0. We have no non-action items, and that takes us to council member comments. I'll just note that it's not yet 9 o'clock.
Just a couple of things. I want to remind everybody to vote on Tuesday at the high school from 7 in the morning till 8 at night. So if you haven't voted, get out there and vote. And I also, Tom, was happy to see that there's a community engagement meeting on June 25th at 5 at the Public Safety Building regarding the skateboard and just configuration and input. There's been a lot of conversation about the skateboard park, and some of the comments that I've seen online were just that adults made the decision, but children and the people that use it really haven't been involved. So I would just encourage parents to bring their children to the meeting and let children be heard, because that's a great forum for them to get their voices out.
Yeah, if I could, just our intent with that is we have a budget we need to respect, but we're totally open and would love to design a facility that the kids and the users want. So that's really what it's all about.
Great. John?
Yeah, so I won't be here at our next council meeting because I'll be out of town for work, but I know you guys are going to be talking about goals, so I'll send some thoughts to the chair and the vice chair. But one resident emailed us over the weekend, and he mentioned the 3 T's that I thought were really helpful for me in terms of when I think of priorities and focus. So it was trees, taxes, and transportation. And so to me, those feel like, as we kind of narrow in the second half of the year, which again, when you take the summer out, because we only meet once in the summer months, we don't have a lot of time. So at least those 3 things really resonated with me. So hopefully you guys will think about those 3 T's next time you guys meet. And if we can make some advancements in those 3 areas, those seem to be areas that our residents really care about. So I liked it.
Great. Anyone else? Larry?
I just want to go on record that I like the 9 o'clock finish rather than the 11 o'clock finish.
Midnight.
Midnight. Yeah. Second, yeah. Bill?
I'll finish with a fun event that takes place each year in Scarborough, at Scarborough's beaches. If you walk Higgins Beach, you will see at least 4 little chicks running around, and there's nothing cuter. In the weeks ahead, you're likely to see upwards of 20 or more little chicks, because the moms and the dads are sitting on those nests with the 4 little eggs, and they're all coming out, and it's a great scene. I live at Higgins Beach, so I enjoy it, and it's great fun to see those little guys running around.
That's great. Thanks. It's a good note to end on. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.